So we're back. We're actually starting out with just me and Steve. Craig should be making it
I
soon.
know.
Fingers crossed. We'll see.
He he is deflating his inflatable doll.
You're
He's
sticking
got to
with
get
that,
to
huh?
it. I am gonna stick with that. It
Uh,
it makes me so happy to see him so mad.
he is not pleased. Fair enough. Fair enough. So we were talking before we got on here just about well, the vaccines and how we're seeing things kind of play out. Israel being kind of a perfect example of what we are talking about just before we got on the air. Basically, everyone there is getting sick with the Delta variant, and whether you're vaccinated or not, it
Well,
seems to.
maybe.
What do you mean, maybe?
Maybe. It's dependent on whether or not they're well, the issue is that they aren't really gene sequencing the different versions of COVID out there right now, right? So we are presuming that it
Oh,
is
so
the
what? This is
Delta
just kind of
variant.
a hearsay thing then?
Yeah, it isn't. There are people who are saying the Delta variant is much more infectious, and there does seem to be a difference in viral load, right? Like a factor of 10 higher viral load
Oh yeah,
in
yeah. It
people
seems to
who
be much
have
more infectious,
the
but it
Delta
also
variant.
seems to be
Right.
less lethal too.
Right. The biggest problem that you have is that whenever somebody's coming in and saying, "Oh yeah, it's the Delta virus, it's the or the Delta variant, it's the Delta variant," the reality is they're not testing for it, right? And that's because sequencing the genome of every single person who gets sick is a very expensive process, especially when you're talking about having to sequence the genome to like 99.9%, because it's a very tiny set of differences that make the Delta different from standard COVID, right? It's an evolved strain from that. So it's got the same parent, it's got most of the same genetic characteristics. So your standard COVID test is just being used, whether it's Delta or not. So the numbers that we're seeing, which are absolutely horrible for those who hopped on vaccine train, um, those numbers we don't know whether it's Delta that's ineffective or whether it's just the vaccines that are ineffective. But well, actually, I would say that, but that's not entirely true either because when we actually go to talk about the measurements of your IgG levels, which is not how those of us who are likely to be immune. Again, I don't know. I didn't get tested, but I'm pretty sure I had it. Same symptom thing. I had it for like 2 months. It fucking sucked. But the people who actually encounter the real live virus mostly get an IgA antibody response. That's your mucosal system, right? That's your upper respiratory tract, your lower respiratory tract, and they get minimal IgG production, which is your bloodborne immune system, right? But all the tests that we've had for whether or not you are immune to the virus is IgG. So what we've found with the IgG antibodies and the IgG antibody test is that it looks like those who happen to have made the wonderful decision to hop on the mRNA bandwagon, it loses like 6% efficacy every week or 6% efficacy every 2 weeks, which is
Oh,
how we're getting down into this.
that's a pretty steep drop off.
It is a very steep drop off. But you know what? It was 96% effective, right? And
Sure.
as I said, and I'm gonna do my little victory lap because I told you so is the biggest, tallest, and sweetest beverage upon which I get to sip on a routinely basis. But what I said over the fall when we were first going into this stuff, and Craig was being Craig, was you cannot come to me with less than 6 months of data and tell me that you have long-term efficacy and safety understood in these things, and we didn't, right? We have way more adverse reactions to the vaccines than we originally anticipated. And it's things like myocarditis, it's serious complications,
And you
not
know what? I
necessarily
will,
lethal.
having seen everything that I've seen, I would say still, given all the options out there, the Johnson and Johnson is the least frightening of them.
Maybe, but I mean, even the Johnson and Johnson's still a new vaccine type, right? It's not like
Yeah,
our
well, I
traditional
mean, at least
vaccines,
it's
which is what
tried and
I tend to
trialed in
support.
humans, whereas the mRNA stuff is a little spooky. And on top of that, you've got the fucking inventor of mRNA vaccines saying, "Hey, we should maybe kind of chill out on this. This is not exactly right." So,
Yeah.
that should give everyone a little bit of pause.
Well, it's the issue is with when you look at the Johnson and Johnson is so that's the adenovirus, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's kind of like trying to simulate previous live virus vaccines with a weaker virus that we change the outer structure so that you respond to the outer structure. And that's probably why it has a lower efficacy rate than the Pfizer Moderna, because Pfizer Moderna pumps something in you that pumps a specific protein, and then they only measure the titers for that specific protein. And surprise, surprise, something that basically causes you to mass manufacture the protein and get antigens against that specific protein, you produce way more antigens than you do in the other stuff.
Oh, sure.
Hold on just a moment. What's
yeah.
that? Yeah, check his water. He's got water. Sorry, the dog is it's moist and warm, and the dog had to go for a walk when it was moist and warm, so he's just sitting there looking pathetic on the floor.
Understandable. I would probably feel
Yep.
the same.
Yep. If I happen to have the amount of fur that he has on him, and his winter coat's starting to come in too, so we're pulling all these little fluff balls off him, which is I love it, and it makes the house a mess. So it's a love-hate relationship with the dog right now.
Much grooming.
But yeah, going back to the Johnson and Johnson thing, it lasts as an actual infection in your system. So my guess is, and I haven't seen any data one way or the other, my guess would be that the efficacy will fall off slower. But at the same time, it's still not the same thing as the vaccines that I do happen to personally endorse, which is your traditional live virus, your attenuated live virus.
Now, to my understanding,
and your inerted virus.
I haven't followed up on this, but I believe there is an actual live virus that's about to be released or possibly up for emergency authorization.
I think there was one that they were trying to get out last year. I don't know whether it's going through the FDA. I think it was circulated internationally, and I can't remember who it was. But yeah, I don't know if they put out a live virus vaccine. Again, I'm going to want to see safety and efficacy data.
Of course.
But assuming that they were trying to get it through the same period of time, you now have a year and a half where they get to make their claims rather than 6 months. And oh yeah, by the way, they fucking lied through their teeth. So what we have is we have a vaccine that now, for those who aren't tuning in or aren't really reading the data, your vaccine efficacy is somewhere around 40%. And this is not, like one crazy conspiracy website. This is the Israel data. It's also backed up by the Ireland data. And I think, is it Scottish? Is it the Scottish data that says it's 40%? I can't remember which one. I think there's a third source there. All of which are confirming that the vaccine efficacy, the deployment was only in January, has dropped from 96% effective to 40% effective. The United States government is trying to blame it on the Delta variant, but again, we're not performing any testing to verify it one way or the other, right? I'm not saying the Delta variant's not real. I'm not saying the original coronavirus is not real. I'm saying that we aren't performing the tests required to verify whether or not it is Delta versus the original strain. And when we do see the IgG levels in the blood dropping something like 6% every 2 weeks, that strongly suggests that it's probably a 40% across the board to any coronavirus. So, yeah, a lot of fun. They lied. They made a shitload of money off lying.
And are still.
They probably said, and they are still. And they successfully whipped up a whole bunch of really, really dumb people into doing and violating civil rights. I mean, what could possibly go wrong? After all, we now have a very stunning development. Australia is taking the bold step, at least for the first time in the last 80 years, of building a camp.
Where yes, they're doing a study camp.
We can involuntarily relocate people, the undesirables, of course, to this camp, and they can concentrate on how much they really want to get the vaccines. All done by military and police and all the rest of the stuff. I can't remember the last time we sat there and we concentrated people in a camp. But I do have this strange inkling that it didn't end up so well for the people who were concentrated in that camp.
No, no, and I mean, if really it is to, keep these people safe, wouldn't that kind of turn it into a super spreader kind of area?
Well, and this is how it's going to go, right? Backing off all of the puns. Um, what will end up happening is they'll sit there and they'll start putting people in the camp, and then all of a sudden they'll start getting death tolls out of that camp, and they'll just blame it on COVID. It's beautiful, perfect excuse.
Oh, hey, yeah,
Nobody need nothing to
win-win.
see here, folks. Just a statistic. A statistic. And by the way, like one of the things
Well,
that I
and I
did
mean,
not
all the
know.
deaths there are COVID related just by way of being
That's
there.
exactly
So, problem
that's
solved.
exactly right. So you're going to prove that COVID was really this terrible disease, and all these poor unvaccinated people who you forcibly removed from their homes, put them in a camp where they died for unspecified reasons, because I'm sure, just like
Well,
the border,
unspecified
we're not going
COVID
to be allowed to
related
see it.
reasons, let's be honest.
Right. Sure. But at the end of the day, that's what we're looking at here. It's amazing that we have gotten to this point where the pharmaceutical companies are robbing us blind. The left is standing up and defending them. Their shit doesn't work. We've stripped civil rights and we're going down the road of concentration camps. I mean, how the fuck do you fuck this up that hard? Where we decide to repeat the late 1930s. That's just
Well,
amazing.
when you have a group of people, kind of working to subvert the will of, nations, they subvert the will of
Mm-hmm.
nations and have shown themselves to be mighty effective at doing so. Oh, and I have an
Oh,
update, by the way, on that, the actual one, the Valneva COVID vaccine, the actual inactivated ad-
yeah.
adjuvanted. Yeah. Anyway, they're going to be doing a study in New Zealand shortly, apparently, in another further phase 3 trial. So it looks like they're actually doing proper trials with this one, and as opposed to everything they did kind of with all the others. Go figure.
The 6 months. Oh yeah, good to go. Start taking your shot. Hey, you know what? I still have I am an uneducated heathen, according to the liberal left. I still have chosen not to get the vaccine. I think that's working out pretty well for me. But as an individual who did take the vaccine, I hope you enjoy your booster.
Yeah, they're freely available.
I'm sure they are. Just take it
As
this
a matter of
far,
fact,
and
old
every
Joe was
single
telling
time,
everybody to go out and make sure to get one. But
as a
I don't
the fun
listen
part
much to
is
him.
that well, it seems that every single time you take one of these shots, the symptoms get a little bit worse. Oh,
Oh, speaking
and
of
then you
that,
got
we
to
were
worry
actually
about
talking about
ADE,
this
but that's the
specifically.
point.
As a matter of fact, with people that have had the shots, that the viral load is virtually identical. Yeah.
Oh yeah, well, so that's the thing is the original claim on the shots was that they reduced the viral load by 40%, which when we talk about masks and vaccines and efficacy measures, and you hear Craig and I argue back and forth on this, I consider, and this is pretty standard for safety equipment, it is not a productive intervention if it doesn't reduce your threat by a minimum of half, right? And masks are in that category. They don't actually increase safety by more than half. And realistically, to be like any form of actual intervention measure, it should be way more than half, right?
Oh,
So
sure.
if I sit there and I take something like I put on, if I prescribe a respirator for people, which I'm actually doing this week, had the joy of kicking off airborne radioactivity events,
Oh,
which
fun.
is lots of fun. Yep. But if I sit there and I assign respirators to people, it's a fit factor of 1,000 as your OSHA qualified fit factor. Now, typically the stuff that we buy tends to be on the order of like 20 to 100,000. That's what the numbers I got on my fit test were. The lowest being 20. So usually it's a 20,000 to 1 increase in safety factor. And we're talking about a 40% reduction in overall viral load. So less than a 40% increase in safety factor. So again, going with the ocean numbers, normally you're looking at 100,000% safety factor for what we actually use for PPE versus a 40% increase in safety factor for the vaccines, and masks are in the same boat, somewhere around 50% to it's 20% protective, according to CDC data. These are the people who are recommending it, right? And this is not including all of the other studies that show to be bunk, right? It's still nothing. We are doing these interventions with no real gains. And here's the crazy part is now that we're into the summer of the Delta variant, we're seeing the viral loads out of people who are taking the vaccine and people who never took the vaccine is roughly equivalent. The Delta variant is most distinguished by the fact that it's got I think it's a tenfold increase in viral load, or maybe a 100-fold increase in viral load, something crazy amount of
pretty
way
substantial.
more
It's
viral
got like an
particles.
R value of 8, I believe.
It's huge. It's debated as to what the exact R value is.
Well, that's what they
because
say.
We don't have really. Right.
Because as you say, we don't have the actual numbers on the specific genetics of this exact variant. But
right.
Yeah.
Right, and we don't know. So there's a lot of caveats. I hate to throw it in there. It kind of kills the narrative, but if I don't do it, I'm not being responsible. But yeah, when we start talking about this thing here, it's the current titer value, or not titers, but current viral loads that we're measuring in nasal swabs from people with Delta variant compared to people who are vaccinated and unvaccinated. The viral loads are exactly the same. And previously, the best case scenario with vaccinated, unvaccinated in the original strain, which must have been taken like right after people actually had the vaccines when their titers were very high, was a reduction of 40%. And we're not even seeing that right now with Delta. And it's questionable whether we're actually seeing that now in the general populace for the regular COVID, given the decrease in overall titers and overall effectiveness that we're seeing in the actual data that we're pulling. They're blaming it on, they're blaming it on Delta, but we're not actually testing for Delta, so we don't actually know that it's Delta. We just suspect it to be Delta.
It could be the fucking Lambda, right?
Why would Pfizer lie?
Yeah, surely Big Pharma wouldn't just go and lie about something. They'd never do that. Those are honest people.
I am absolutely sure that Pfizer doesn't have any motive whatsoever to blame a brand new variant instead of admitting their vaccines are possibly not particularly effective. There's no motive at all associated with fudging those numbers. It's amazing. Fucking amazing.
It's kind of something. I mean, you could absolutely say we're in uncharted territory.
Yep.
Sadly
I'm going to have to read up on this if it's an actual...
Oh, the Valneva?
If it's an...
Yeah. It's like an actual legit one. So it'll be interesting to see how this...
Not an adenovirus, not an...
Yeah, now mind you, it's going to be based on the initial strain or the alpha strain. So...
I mean, that's okay, though. Right? If it's live virus that's
yeah, but I mean, that is going to give you actual T-cell immunity, right?
Yeah.
And I mean, that's what you want.
It all depends, right? The difficulty, and this goes back to kind of why I was suspicious from mRNA vaccines to start. The mRNA vaccines force your cell, they give you an unspecified dosage. It works in an unspecified way, right? So we talked long ago about how these are closer to like gene therapy. Gene therapy has a very, very different acceptance criteria per the FDA, right? It's not, you can't just turn around and get 6 months worth of data and be like, yep, good to go. You actually have to chart
unless it's for coronavirus.
Well, yeah. I mean, but that's the thing is they ran it under a vaccine instead of under a gene therapy. if they ran it under a gene therapy, it's like 3 to 5 years to actually get the data on it. You have to sit there and identify how much protein's being actually made, where that protein's going. You have to actually track it to make sure it's not creating other problems down the road, like ADE, which we can get into if folks are curious. Which is one of the concerns that I
Actually,
have with the coronavirus
let's just drop
vaccines out
right
there.
into that right now because I personally am a little curious, and I think I know what you're talking about. But that's reason enough to go ahead and clarify.
So, like I've said from the beginning, I didn't think there was long-term safety and efficacy data, right? That was the stance that I took when they first dropped this. Vaccines are ready to go. That was a huge point of contention between Craig and I. That is the point that I still stand. And whenever I go looking for actual data, the fact that they're lying and fudging numbers and pulling shit, which I've pulled into these discussions numerous times and explained why it's bullshit that the CDC is giving us specific numbers or Pfizer is giving us numbers. Like, we pulled those into chat. We've had those discussions. That does not instill confidence. The two things that the thing that I was biggest concerned is, and this is because of the people who are promoting this, the largest concern I had is fertility. I've yet to find data on that.
And
But
there are
as
some
part of
worrying anecdotal tales related to that specifically.
there are indeed, and they are somewhat justified. So when you
And,
start talking about the
when one
fertility
considers
stuff,
the way that it works and the way that it targets cell clusters,
yep,
it
it's a
is
legit
not
question.
unreasonable to consider that this very well might look at a small clump of cells of any variety as
Right.
alien and something that must be destroyed.
And the issue, like, where Craig and I got into it a bit was Craig was sitting there and saying that, you run into that same risk with the virus, which I disagree with firmly. But what we're dealing with
Well,
right
I mean,
now,
he
the
does make a
anecdotal
valid point
evidence,
there with that, though, because we do have the very weird, very powerful sequelae that are things
yes,
we
yes
really
and no.
legitimately do need to be concerned with. Like there
I,
are
I'm not saying
like
that
the fact that COVID attacks the gonads in men, which
I'm
it
not
certainly
saying that
shouldn't.
COVID's not
But
dangerous.
but
I'm not
we
saying that
are
COVID's
looking
not
at
dangerous. But
it's it's a gamble either way, and the numbers
yes,
for COVID are basically pretty well known. And as we've said here, the numbers for the vaccines, the mRNA vaccines most specifically, are very much more fuzzy.
yes. And again, this isn't to say that the COVID's not real or anything like that, but there are legitimate concerns. When I go dive into the fertility data, every single time I see something stupid like, well, we don't really have any data saying that it's not good, so you should just trust them right away. That's not the same thing as a safety data set.
Well,
Safety data sets are
as a
specific
matter of
to
fact, your
this
point
actually
here was
works.
so perfectly put by Samuel Jackson at one point to say the absence of evidence is not the evidence of absence.
That's correct.
And I mean that's
Um,
really hit. It
now,
really is that simple.
it is, and that's the thing that every time I talk to the left is like, well, you should just accept it, and I don't fucking understand that. But when we start talking about this anecdotal shit, the anecdotal shit in terms of fertility is stuff like high levels of miscarriage, lots of high levels of miscarriage, odd period behavior, which is kind of bizarre. And there is, again, a reason to suspect that this is potentially causing a problem. It's going to be more specific to women than it is to men,
Oh, certainly.
but there is reason to suspect that there could be a problem associated with it. However, what people do whenever people point this out is they say, well, the studies that you're pulling these data from, they didn't complete the study, right? They didn't go to term with all the women that were in the study. One of the ones was 82% miscarriage rate, which isn't necessarily abnormal, because they only ran the study for like 2 weeks or a month or something like that. Like, they gathered 4,000 people and only 127 of them completed their pregnancies, and of that, 111 were miscarriages. That doesn't mean that, it's an 82% failure rate on conception, right? That's not what that means. It just means that they didn't study everybody else. So the question that you should ask is if this is supposed to be the fertility study of effective fertility in these whole entire in these things, you'd think that you'd want start to finish comparisons of this, but I'm not seeing that stuff, and that makes me suspicious. But as a course of going through this, you got to read tons of papers if you really want to be intelligent and not sound like you're talking out of your ass. And one of the papers I found has to do with ADE. And this is something that is unique to coronaviruses. The primary reason, purportedly, that we switched over to these brand new vaccines, adenovirus and mRNA, is every single time we have ever tried to produce a coronavirus vaccine in the history of coronavirus vaccines. Hold on, I'm just seeing question marks. What's going on?
Oh, Craig hopped in for a second, and now he's gone. Anyway.
All right. So every single time we've attempted to produce a coronavirus vaccine in the history of coronavirus vaccine, Biden's correct. We've been working on this for like decades, right? It has always ended in abysmal failure for the vaccine candidates. And that's in the animal studies. And abysmal failure is achieved because in every single time that we've done it, we have induced what's known as ADE, or autoimmune deficiency, or autoimmune disease enhancement. And what this is
I thought I knew what you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, please continue.
So,
I know exactly what you're talking about.
So autoimmune disease enhancement is when the antibodies that you produce don't neutralize the virus, right? So essentially all it does is kind of like do something. It just basically binds to the virus, and it can end up, especially for macrophage infection, introducing the virus into the cell, essentially acting as a direct key and port lock into the cell. And so the virus ends up having new vectors to attack your system, along with the previous vectors, because the antibodies you have don't become effective. So you end up doing more damage to your immune system, enhancing the disease. That's one effect that comes in. And the second is the original reports that we got of cytokine storm that were coming out of these things, out of the initial cases of coronavirus. And basically what ends up happening is your body hits the red alert button, blow the bridges, burst the hatches, everything must die, because it's not successfully winning its fight against the virus, which is not inerted by the antibodies you have in your system. And this is known as autoimmune disease enhancement, where your immune system ends up imploding and attacking yourself and your own cells, which means that you get new symptoms and a lot of crazy other shit.
Well, not only that, that's actually kind of what the late stage COVID is.
That is the late stage, yes, but that can trigger it with this stuff. So that's another risk factor associated with taking these things.
So,
but that's all right.
Are you there, Craig?
I am.
Oh, excellent. Glad you could join us.
For now, anyway.
Right.
Did you have enough time to clean out the fleshlight?
Well, anyway, we were talking about...
Sorry, I just wanted to go ahead and let that get into awkward territory before I told you to go fuck yourself.
Okay. All right. Well, at least one of us is fucking something.
So, anyway, we were just talking about how everything is kind of fucked. But specifically,
we covered General Milley.
Oh no! We haven't even gotten off of the vaccine boosters yet. So
fuck him. Yeah.
You spent an hour and a half on vaccine boosters.
No,
we haven't been on
okay.
I didn't
that
get
long.
in
We've only been talking for like a half hour now.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
and we didn't
Milley,
even start with.
Milley's just you see him. He's starting to fall on his sword for the SecDef Austin.
Now, this is the same Milley that likes to study fiction. Like, he's a guy that reads Harry Potter, Wizard of Oz, White Fragility, White Rage, comic books, stuff like that. He likes to study those sort of things, like dragons and fairies and stuff, like fictional stuff. That's him, isn't it?
Yeah, that's the guy who cross-dresses routinely. Sorry, did I say that out loud?
Oh, does he
Allegedly.
really?
This guy's such a chode.
So tell us more about
Like,
Milley. I know I didn't actually watch it, but I know he did come out to say some words regarding Afghanistan. Something about how no
we're
one
talking
could
about this
ever
guy
have
right here. Yeah.
expected something like that.
Well, that was the best part. Everything was expected to happen after we left. Okay, pal. Well, the country, and I like how the number of days keeps stretching every time they say it. Like, it collapsed in less than a week. Like 5 or 6 days. And
Well,
then it became 9
5
days.
days
And I mean,
ago,
And now it's
those
11
guys were
days.
jumping off of planes.
Like, it went from
Oh, sorry,
less
2
than a
days
week.
ago.
Went from less than a week to 9 days to today being 11 days. So every time they say something, it's gonna increase. It's gonna be like fishing, where the size of the fish gets bigger every time. Like just give it the fuck up. Your shit fell apart in less than a week. You guys decided to draw down in the dumbest fucking possible way.
I mean, for fuck's
And
sake,
the result of
Saigon
it-
took like 2-3 weeks, right?
They predicted weeks to months to years, apparently, and well after the United States had left. I'm sorry,
Well, maybe
but
if you
you're
had
still there.
kind of an orange blowhard to go out there and say, "I'm going to fucking bomb you if you fuck around," maybe. But
And this is the
That
crazy
was the whole-
part, right? Like
Like,
we expected this to happen, and they did nothing
Eventually.
about it. I'm not saying that we should have stayed, right? Like, but you can't come into me and be like, oh yeah, yep, they're advancing every single time we left. Oh yeah, we forgot our Blackhawks. Whoops. like,
Well,
here's the
just
thing, here's the thing.
let me
it
just
was going
say,
to collapse potentially if we left and we didn't support their government there. The idea was that they were potentially going to form coalition rule, and that maybe the Taliban would take over the government again. That was kind of the best case scenario, and then the idea after that, supposing you want to be a little conspiratorial, is that China and Russia would try to go in there and take over or whatever, and they would fuck it up, and somehow we'd have to go back to war again like last time. The thing is, we're going to still have to go back to war like last time, but this time it's going to be because we fucked up again. Like last time, we
Well,
went in there
I
and we
mean,
fucked around with Russia by funding their opposition. Russia this time funded our opposition. So it's going to happen again,
How the
except
fuck
this
is
time
it-
we're going to get fucked by trying to fund Russia's opposition.
how the fuck is it that we go into this whole entire thing and somehow leave behind multi-million-dollar pieces of equipment?
Because
That's
they
what I
decided to
wanna know.
rush out of there.
well, actually,
So-
that's what I was wanting to talk on
It's-
just a
it's just
second
that-
ago.
it's just more
Specifically,
expensive.
there was a plan in place. There was a working group in place that has just come out,
Right.
like in the past few
There's
days,
a little bureau that he put together.
that this organization was dissolved completely as late as June
Because-
and potentially as early as February. And this group was tasked specifically with resolving these issues before we got out.
You know what?
Ah.
The thing is, it was because fuck Trump and reverse everything he ever did. I get it with the Obama-Trump transition, there was a lot of animus.
Yeah, it's out of
And
the
a lot
National
of Obama era
Pulse. I'm
stuff.
going to link that for you guys, and I'll actually put it in the chat. Or not in the chat, if we had one. I'll put it in the show links below so that anybody can check that out. There will be chat soon, though, but that's neither here nor there.
Oh yeah. So the thing is, I get that Obama's policies, a lot of them were reversed under Trump, largely out of spite. There are just some things were not necessary to reverse, but they were done, and it was basically a nominal issue. This is putting tens of thousands of American lives. Was it 10 to 40 grand? The number of people that are in the country that we should give a shit about.
Yeah,
because
and that's not even
citizens-
counting Afghan allies. But yeah.
Yeah, not counting
you know what?
70,000 people that are still there that fought for us that are going to get slaughtered. You know, that's a minor detail.
I think that we can take one major and crucial learning lesson out of this, and I think the major and crucial learning lesson is that even though we spent millions of dollars on gender recognition programs in this region, diversity is clearly not a strength because it didn't help these motherfuckers at all. Like, maybe strength is the strength. And you should
the
just
Taliban kind of took over as a monoculture, and you know that seems to be That seems to kind of be if anything, at least the example that proves the rule, you know? So the counterexample that
Oh
proves the
yeah,
rule.
that's right. That's right.
At the very least, it needs to be
Taliban,
recognized.
I encourage them to. I encourage the LGBT community to go there and lead on with the Taliban because I am
You know
sure
what?
Yeah, if you
that
ever
they will
wanted
Okay, they
to,
should join the Taliban. I want to see that too.
I mean, if you ever wanted to really take feminism to a place where it's needed, ladies,
That's
you
exactly
are
right.
needed. Like there is a fight to be
Say
had.
Shanty Binks.
You know what? We should just
Listen, tankies,
airdrop
maybe we can even
Anita
set you up with some tanks.
Brianna Wu and Zoe Quinn in there, and they can present to the Taliban, just like they did to the UN, about how important it is to not bully online.
You know, I want to see Chanty Binks, otherwise known as Big Red, show up over there and tell them to shut the fuck up. I want to see how that shit goes down.
Yeah, that would be great. I don't wish ill will on anybody, but I think it'd be really nice.
I would
for
not
some
be
people
upset that much. I'd be more upset that we allowed them to leave than that they got hurt.
Now, if we're being entirely honest, the Taliban, though they are kind of inbred camel herders, they are led by some people that have some common sense. So
Yeah,
the odds
because
are they're going to
CIA
try
gave it to
and
them.
get every single American that is obviously American out. Now, if you're a woman,
No. They've set up Taliban checkpoints.
Oh, they absolutely have.
Around the airport. Around the airport, Americans are not being let through. And
They're not.
Scanning actively for any of the. They're scanning actively for the Afghans that helped us.
Oh, you can guarantee that
kill
if you are
Listen,
they're probably not going to go after the
diversity-
Americans, but yeah, the Afghans that helped. Oh, those.
They just aren't allowing Americans through right now.
Diversity is our strength, and all of those people who believe in multiculturalism and want to experience foreign cultures, I think this is a great opportunity.
Absolutely.
Like,
I mean, there was a British lad who went over went there just recently to experience what it was like, and it was a learning and growing experience for him.
Did you see his face on the plane?
Yeah, it was not the same as his face in the first picture.
Did you see that? His hope and joy in life were gone.
But just think, right? This is brand new, multicultural, non-Western, non-white people that all of those folks who are really super woke have the best opportunity to bring about an equitable society, and I think they should show us how it's done.
Well, I mean, maybe it's time for tankies to be tankers,
Well,
Mm-hmm.
it's about time they start learning how to speak Mandarin, because if you go over there right now, that's the language you're going to be speaking eventually.
I mean, that's the language we're going to be speaking eventually too, so that's not exactly a comment.
Oh, I fucking refuse. I already got several foreign languages under my belt. I don't need another one.
That's okay. Long before that, the big guy will follow the Australians' lead, and we will be able to relocate you and your people to a comfortable.
a lovely little coof camp just for you.
Australian. You said Australian. You meant Austrian, but please keep going.
No. Australia's actually setting up.
Yeah, they're setting up camps. I know that fucking psychotic woman.
I love it. I'm like, oh.
Jacinda in New Zealand is doing the same shit.
It's camps where you can concentrate on not spreading COVID.
Yeah, you can study on how bad you've been. Concentrate real hard on it.
We've never sat there and picked people out in society as undesirables and sent them to camps.
Well, I mean, we have actually, but it generally kind of has a bad ending,
Well,
at least the last time it's been tried.
There's a good ending in the United States, all right? I mean, George Takei lived a long life. He was able to be one of the persecuted people under AIDS, just so that he can spread the joy of his issues now. When he comes out and basically says, fuck you if you're unvaccinated, and you should basically go to camp.
Oh, I will
Well,
say
you know
I
what?
am I'm super super happy for all these like far lefty people that are finally waking up to what a sham Obamacare is, and they're saying we can't have this Obamacare for all. And you know what? I couldn't agree more. They're coming out here. They're saying,
What are you talking about?
oh, they're saying, well, if you're
George Takei.
unvaccinated, we shouldn't be providing you with this medical care. And
You
absolutely
shouldn't
right.
get priority medical care in George Takei's ideal paradise if you don't
Oh,
vaccinate.
yeah,
Which
I
means,
saw
by
that.
the way, everybody who can't vaccinate is included in that
Yeah, so
statement.
like if you've got
So
multiple
that motherfucker
sclerosis,
basically wants, yeah,
cancer, blood cancers, various things.
Yeah,
It's
yes,
it's
indeed.
unconscionable.
Oh, it's very conscionable. Like, yeah, I understand exactly where their conscience is. It's the same place that it was back in the 1930s. I mean, how can we build the National Socialist Order if we do not have everybody compliant?
well, I mean,
Now you
they're
sound like
working
a.
on at least parts of that. We've got Dustin is
You know,
amazing. We've
That's
got
right.
other things too. I mean, they're trying to have the
it's
whole
funny.
shebang. They're trying to have Weimar and the follow up.
It's funny
I
because
mean,
that sounds like some particular kinds of cultural appropriation by an Asian person of distinctly European culture. And this woman right here would just not have it if he wrote a book on it.
well, you know what?
I don't know if you saw that
we
shit
can
show about her
go.
and her culinary issues.
Oh, is this the noodle
I
woman?
figured that
Yeah.
Australia. I figure Australia can go to Germany and ask them about their Santa lessons, so they can teach people to go up and down chimneys.
Oh my god.
With a wiggle
Oh
of the
shit.
nose.
Coof Camp 101. How to
Oh
participate in
hi.
chimney.
Your attitude's sour. Come over here, step into the shower. That's brutal.
It is.
Well, at least
Yeah.
when
That puts a whole new
when they go to the
spin
Coof
on
camp, they'll be able to get a lot of work done. They'll feel very free.
Oh,
It'll be a
dude.
good experience for them.
That puts a whole new fucking
And they'll
spin
owe
on Mary
nothing,
Poppins.
and they'll
Hold
be
on.
happy.
That puts a whole new spin on Mary Poppins. The fucking chimney sweepers.
That's right.
Indeed.
That's
Indeed.
right.
Oh, and actually, on a bit of an update to that, let me find this here.
There's-
Here we go. So from 2019, I'm gonna link the whole thread, but I'm gonna link the specific part here because it's a really excellent one. But I'm just going to read it straight out. It's from Richard Hanania. Afghan official... Oh, by the way, this is also from December 10th, 2019. So we're a little ways out from here, but it gives you some context. Afghan officials say U.S. priorities did not meet Afghan conditions. Nothing to build up agriculture, massive investments in education without system being able to absorb graduates, complains to quote-unquote focused on the training of girls and minority rights and things. So this is from 2 years ago. So with that and with some of the other rumblings we're kind of hearing, we've long known something was coming. And it was really just a matter of time.
I mean, I'm all
Pakistan
for,
was
like,
funding
and
these
this is-
fuckers.
What's really funny is, like, I saw ABC News do the whole entire thing about, there's this whole generation of women that we trained. This is the biggest problem that I had back in the day with the whole Afghanistan program. Right? We walked into a country that's essentially a feudal state, right? And the only reason that we are not a feudal state in America is because we went through a cultural revolution internally that allowed us to sit there and desire to not be a feudal state anymore. You can't just turn around and take a whole bunch of feudal people, throw them into, a situation, give them weapons and say, you're free now. They don't even have a concept of it. They don't understand what they want. And this is painfully obvious because, in a feudal state, the serfs just go run to whoever's got the biggest fucking stick. That's all they do. And that's what they did here. The second the U.S. left, they ran over and said, all right, you guys got the big stick. You're in charge now.
Now, that's actually not entirely accurate. And a lot of that's from a big bunch of media interpretation and just shutting up about things they shouldn't have. They've lost something like 50,000 Afghan National Army people. And they had been fighting. Now, this is over an extended period. This isn't like just in 2019 or just in 2020. But, I mean, this is in the expanded fighting they've been doing. But earlier this year, America withdrew all air support. Earlier in the year.
What they've been trained to fight under, by the way.
They fought. They can lose their 50,000, but that's a cumulative thing over a long period of time. That is not a definition of that doesn't refute my hypothesis, right, of the feudal state, because at the end of the day, the United States was still there, still performing combat operations, still sitting there with a big stick, right?
Well, I mean, technically, the U.S. is still there in Okinawa in Japan with a big stick, but I mean, we're not really super worried about a bunch of weebs.
That's a little bit different, though, right?
Yeah, well, that's the way they got destroyed internally, though. They allowed anime.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
So
there's this thing like
as much shit as I give you, Craig, over your dating preferences. I got an engineer at work, and he's sitting there and talking about how difficult it was for him to find a date. And he was still living with his parents at the time, so that's strike one, right?
Oh yeah.
And then he turns around. And
that's actually strike one and two.
So then he turns around and he told me, he says, I'm like, so what does your dating profile say? I hope he's saying that you're a nuclear engineer working at a national lab. These kinds of things that women actually want to see.
Right.
And he goes, no. I said that.
No, I'm fun-loving. I like walking on the beach.
No. He said that you have to be a fan of anime. He didn't even go for the generic shit. Like,
Jesus.
He didn't go for alpha
male shit. Did he show himself with an anime waifu pillow or something?
Go for generic shit.
Was his profile picture a katana and a fucking fedora?
Oh, God.
Pretty fucking close. And so as much shit as I can give certain individuals for their dating choices, I was like, oh my God, dude, you're so...
Here's the thing, like, I just kind of fell into it. I fell into it out of nowhere. Like, he's fucking looking for it.
Like, you fell into anime?
No, into the relationship I'm in.
Oh yeah, well, I mean that's how most of us find some aspect of a relationship, right?
It wasn't like I was out there like, all right, how do I find people that are at the moment totally fucking inaccessible? I want to enjoy being frustrated for years. No, but this guy's sitting there like, I need to find people that are on the other side of the planet that aren't going to lift a fucking finger to come find me.
See, I see how it is, right? Your first question is, how do I find people that are replaceable at Spencer's Gifts? The second question that he asked is how large of a pump do I really want to expend on this thing? Like,
that sounds like about the options old dude was looking at.
So my buddy there, I was like, oh God, there's like so I started getting laid when I was like 17, 18, like normal people, and I have no idea how the hell anybody chose to go after me, but it was like a perpetual nonstop thing. But this guy, like, to turn around and put anime in your profile and not have the awareness that you put anime in your profile is so sad. It's just like you just shake your head and you're like,
this is why I was asking. Like, is one of the pictures him hugging his waifu pillow? Like, it's just
he does.
It just does not sound.
He does in fact have a waifu pillow.
Oh my fucking God!
I shit you not. Oh yeah.
I believe it.
Like, he pulled it out, and I was like, oh my God, dude, no.
You don't show people shit like that, you numbskull.
Yeah, don't show that to anyone. Like, pretend it doesn't exist.
Like, that's the kind of shit. That's the kind of shit you go on Wizard Chan and show to all your friends there.
What is Wizard Chan?
You know what a wizard is, right? It's a person who's a virgin. Yep. A person who's a virgin past 30.
Oh, I did not know in that context.
Yeah, that's the internet parlance.
Yeah. So
Ashton.
Wizard Chan is basically a place that unfuckable incels end up at.
How do
And
you?
the people
So
that wish to
first off,
mock them.
I don't even understand how you can be a virgin past the age of 20, much less past the age of 30. Like, you should literally have just had a
No,
random opportunity
we're
where
talking
something
about
told you
like
that.
kissless virgins whose only affection in life might have been their mothers.
Yeah, like
Wow.
legitimately, people. There's
It's sad.
I've seen posts elsewhere of people saying they are touchless, kissless virgins, and
Yeah,
that's kind of astounding.
it's a legitimate place to pity somebody. If you've ever felt like you're like at a shitty place in life, go there and look at these people who are very suicidal. So just to include some extra fun context here, this is a place that Zoe Quinn would go and torture people until that got found out, and then she blamed men, of course.
As she does.
It's that was one of those bits of the Johnny bomb that kind of stuck hard on the landing. Is that she would go there
I know.
and she went there and when she was on when she was something awful creepoid, she went there and she helped convince people to kill themselves. Isn't that fun?
Well, good
Oh,
people.
People that
I mean,
these people are they are the saddest people in society. These are not like the perfect gentleman incels that go on shooting sprees. These are the incels that existed before everyone knew what the word incel was.
I
Back when
just,
it meant you were just
again,
pathetic, not psychotic.
I still don't understand how you can be in a position where that doesn't happen. Merely by the laws of probability, by the time you are 30, you should have had at least like
Well, that's the thing.
10
That's
women who were
probability.
just in the mood on the street.
Remember that probability, like the statistics don't care about individuals. So it's not like you show up later on in life and you 1% fuck somebody. Um, there are going to be the people who 100% failed to have any
I
social interaction
I
that led to that
suppose.
by the time they die in their 80s. There's
There,
going to be those kind of people.
it
They're
does
just far
happen.
and few
Hmm.
between.
It's
It's
just
just that
that
the internet
now
allows us to look at them all.
they're kind of all together, so you can actually see how surprisingly large a
Like, I
group it
mean,
is.
Craig, you've been laid, right? Like, it's
I
not
have not.
impossible. And that's, oh my God. This is, I'm, please tell me, Evan. Please tell me I'm not the only
Neither an
one.
incel nor a flat earther. Jesus fuck.
Oh, oh, I'm gonna have to reevaluate what I've done, my decisions in life that have led me to this chat.
Oh man, you. You are trouble.
I'm just glad that we
I
give him
am.
an existential crisis about weekly.
That's fair. That's fair. It does make things a little
I
bit better.
now I will have an existential crisis weekly. I thought I was ripping on you, but now I just feel sad.
Oh, come
Okay.
on. It's going to happen very shortly here.
Hmm. So
So
yeah,
speaking of
the
sad,
weeaboo shit is fucking
you
weird.
posted a picture of a lady here, and we should probably talk about that because even though the people can't see it, this lady, she's really sad because a white woman wrote a book about noodles, and
After 15 years of experience gaining the expertise to cook those noodles perfectly within the
literally
culture they came
traveling
from,
to
mind you,
other nations to learn to cook said noodles. As a matter of
from
fact,
the experts themselves.
Wait,
Yeah.
who's upset
The sad
for
looking
this?
woman in the
Who are
picture, the one with the wistful face looking out the window.
let me see here. I will
why is
do
she
a
The window
sad?
is
search
not a
on
picture.
Google for noodle woman, and I'll bet I can find it.
Why? Where do
Oh,
you
hold on.
guys find
There
this
it
shit?
is.
That's what I want to know.
Perfect. Top
It just shows
listing.
up on my Twitter feed, man.
Eden
Like you
Confidential
think
from Walk to Woke. Nigella Lawson's pal is accused of
Let me
racist
give you the
cooking
beginning
over
and end.
Asian recipes. There it is.
Let me give Steve the Cliff's notes and 2 pictures of tweets. All right.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
Here's the genesis of it, right? And here's the terminus right here.
So, our friend Rosalind, she didn't like that a white woman wrote a book about dumplings and noodles. And so
I have no idea what Kreplach is, by the way, this woman.
Yeah, unsurprisingly.
Or pierogi. or any of another like what 50 or 60 different variety of dumplings that you can name off the top of your head. She's upset about this white woman who spent the time and effort to become a high functioning expert in the field of fucking noodles and dumplings.
Indeed.
She wrote a recipe book. That's offensive.
Because, God forbid, someone, travel the fucking world and learn how to do all of these different things and then share it with anyone.
You know what? I have to say that, like, one of the things that is most greatly unappreciated in today's society is a woman who actually knows how to cook.
Yeah.
Like somebody who actually turned around and bucked the fucking trend and said, you know what? I'm gonna go chase this, and I'm passionate about it. Like, power to it. Like my buddy's wife cooks. We're doing food boxes right now. My wife and I, we're trying to like learn how to cook. Which I know is sad on its own deep.
It is
deep
so
emotional
sad. I'm
level.
sorry.
It is. I know how to cook meat. That's the extent of my experience cooking.
Well, yeah. Put on fire. Wait.
Yes. That is.
Yeah, that's.
I combine.
Wait till tasty.
I combine all of my manliness into a 30-minute window.
Yeah.
Sometimes 2.5 hours if I'm really feeling like being a fucking prick and like mastering temperatures or whatever.
What you should do is get yourself a smoker. I have to tell you, because it was what my little brother got my dad for his birthday.
Pellet grill, my friend. Pellet grill is king.
My little brother got my dad a smoker for his birthday. It's a pellet grill, I guess. I don't know how. Like, I don't know what the fucking differences are between these things, so I don't really care.
So a smoker,
Yeah.
right? A smoker will generally they're gas powered or electric,
Right.
but you'll basically put your wood chips in, and then you have to maintain your wood chips, right?
So this
grill,
this does the pellet thing. It feeds them in with the worm gear,
so
and
it's got an automatic feeder. I think there's a couple things that they call
it's
a
got
smoker.
a pit and it's got something else in it, and then it just feeds in the
it's
the
a
pellets.
pellet grill. It's amazing.
But still,
have to
it
finish
smokes stuff. So
I have one.
Yeah.
It's absolutely amazing. But yes, my skills are cooking meat, and that's just because fire and meat are man skills, and that's the extent of my understanding of food. And I can boil noodles because
so I would say, how do you fuck up cooking noodles? But I have witnessed it personally several times, and the funny thing is about a solid 75% of the time that noodles get fucked up, it's a woman that's done it. Just by the stats in my life, like, it's not a woman thing necessarily.
Now, I'll be honest, I have fucked up noodles, but I've only fucked up noodles when I've never worked with them before.
I was in the Boy Scouts. I saw people burn noodles. I didn't know it was possible to burn noodles
I have to give you
with water.
I have to give you a anecdote on that one. So a brief aside here. So there's a thing in my school. I can't remember the name of the it was like Florida something or another. Anyway, we ended up going to the Everglades and doing a little thing where you take a little boat and you go around. So it's like camping for like a week. It's nothing special. And I had done plenty of camping in my life before this. Several people, it was very obviously, had never left their fucking homes except to go to school and maybe to a theme park. There are two young ladies at the time who decided to do cooking our first night. When we linked up our rafts and we put up little hammocks. or like a little mosquito nets, like. But they decided to cook the first night. They fucked up macaroni and cheese, and I have to tell you how because it's spectacular.
I'm legitimately curious because I've got an idea in my head here, but
So
I'm assuming we're talking. Are we talking like Blue Box?
we're talking effectively blue box, like blue box, but taken out of the packaging so that it's easier to pack up into camping gear.
okay,
Got
So
it.
all right.
so what they did was they put the noodles in. They added enough water to just cover the noodles, and put it on the fire. Propane, little propane ranges. They put it on a propane
Yep.
range, and it sat there. It was like crackling and popping by the time they were done.
Oh, okay.
They poured the fucking cheese powder in with no milk or anything.
Oh, okay.
Didn't stir it. Didn't stir it. So somehow it was burnt on the bottom, undercooked on top, and then had a layer of crusted burnt cheese on top. I don't know how they burnt the top and burnt the bottom, but left the middle undercooked. But that's how it worked.
That's really
So it was-
impressive.
So basically, I didn't have food that night, except when I decided to like pull in from over the side of the boats, and that was like a couple of nibbles of something. And I'm not even gonna go into the details on that, but it was survival level shit right there.
Oh,
I know how to cook. I know how to catch clean fish and cook them properly. Like I can flay them and debone them and everything. I could do it back then,
Well, that's
and
good,
I didn't need a
'cause
metal fishing hook to do
I'm
it.
thinking
All I
we're
needed
gonna
was a
head.
knife.
I think we're heading to the point in time where that's going to be a legitimate skill again.
Like I can do this shit without needing anything more than a knife and some trees around me. And because of that, when we there's this little bit at the end of that trip they call solo, where you spend a couple hours just by yourself with a pen and a little notebook. You're supposed to document your feelings and shit. It's like whatever, I don't care. I'm just gonna eat some cactus or whatever. I was going to fish. I made a fishing hook, it doesn't look like a fishing hook, but you basically cut a stick, and you cut a stick down to a little piece about the size of your finger, or about from your second knuckle to the end. You put a 3 holes in it. You notch over the second hole in the middle, and then you send string through the 2 ends, and then bounce down through the center hole, so that if a fish eats it, it breaks in the middle and points back out the fish's mouth, so it gets caught in the gills. Like it's stupid simple to use. You just throw it in the water and wait a little bit, or you put some crab on the end of it. So because I made this, and the bitch who was leading us saw it, they put me in the middle of the island instead of at the coast. So I handed it off to the person who was going to the coast, and she unfortunately couldn't use it to catch anything. So I was in the middle. I said, "Okay, you guys." They put me in the middle of a bunch of fucking cactuses too, like thinking I wasn't going to be able to do anything with prickly pear. So I went ahead and had myself some cactus juice, and they came back to a scene of devastation.
I guess that's what you get.
Because they said you're not allowed to bring like a knife or anything. My dad handed me a fucking knife and he said, "Look, don't tell him." I said, "Yeah, I'm taking this with me." Because if I saw some gator, I was gonna have myself some good meat too. I almost started a fire, and I was like, but they'll see the smoke. Because they were
And that's
roaming
for an
around.
hour and a half.
They were roaming around between the different students. They didn't lose us because they're slightly responsible.
So what was the purpose of this nonsense?
So you can spend time in nature and commune with, I don't know, whatever the fuck. It was to spend 2 hours writing down your thoughts and feelings and experiencing nature.
So this
this
was
is
some
so
kind
stupid.
of punishment then.
It's basically
Oh,
if you knew what you were
come
doing,
on,
this was just 2 hours to sit there with nobody else near you.
Okay.
So like I said, I enjoyed some cactus juice. All the prickly pear around me was completely defruited.
Yeah, I happen to enjoy alone time in the wilderness. As much as
Yeah.
I'm
I do
constantly
too.
working on my house or whatever, right? Like if I got done with my house, I'm probably gonna just start going off in the woods and doing push-ups.
Imagine that
right?
what you were going to return to after that 2 hours is this painfully annoying person telling you about how important nature is for the rest of your journey back to society.
Well, I'm pretty sure, again, nature's going to be very important very soon if we keep walking the path that we're walking.
Yeah,
So,
like it's because
I'm
it's the
I'm
funniest
I'm
thing. Me and
voting
my
for
friend were the only two that were
collapse.
competent, and we were put in. They only let us be in the same boat once because we ended up like doing circles around everyone else.
Isn't it funny how that works out?
And then when we showed up, to the point where we were able to put tents up at the end, our tent was up in 5 seconds flat. Everyone else is just like, "How do tents work? What don't we need sticks?" It's like it's a fucking off the shelf tent. You link the shit together and put it up.
Mm.
These children were so fucking sheltered. Like I'm glad that my dad routinely would drag our asses out in the middle of fucking nowhere, and we just have to like put our tents up on our own and just he'd bring steaks and we cook them, of course, because nobody's got fucking time to go and fillet a
See,
gator.
and
But
nobody has the time to prepare a real meal that's not already prepped for you. I
yeah,
don't see
I
the
don't
point.
understand how the fuck they fucked up noodles like mac and cheese. This is Mac and cheese is one of the simplest things to make. They fucked that up so badly that so each the students were divided up into teams of like 12. So basically, like 14 people didn't eat that night because of these two dipshits. They fucked up mac and
Hmm.
cheese.
Yeah, I
Like
mean
it's
that
like
is
fucking
kind
up
of an
angel hair.
accomplishment.
It's like fucking up angel hair by waiting more than 2 minutes. You know, it's
Yep.
just that bad.
Although I haven't had pasta in a long time.
So I recently witnessed the angel hair thing myself, which is why that came to mind. I didn't realize it was still possible to fuck up angel hair in this day and age, but somebody waited like 5 solid minutes to make the angel hair instead of two. So it was way overdone, and the person eating is like, "I don't like angel hair." It's like that's because that's overcooked.
Yeah, when it turns
Yeah,
into a
angel
kind
angel
of a
hair is
mess. Yeah.
amazing.
It turns into pudding. It's not angel hair anymore.
No.
Angel hair is an amazing pasta. I actually it's my personal in terms of spaghettis,
Yeah,
it's my personal favorite.
I
it's the
actually
one I
like
go
fat
to
noodles
because it's
myself,
like
but that's me.
so I like both. I prefer angel hair largely out of convenience. But like, if I'm gonna make a
Mm.
good pasta, usually I go for the spiral pasta, just because it holds like cheeses and sauces better. So if I want to put like a good pesto into it, I usually go for the I can't remember the damn name of it. It's like spirulini or
You-
whatever.
Oh, rotini?
Thank you.
I have found that elbows does me good enough for most
So if
everything
you want to make like if you want
outside
to do
of
like meat and
pasta.
onions, then elbows are great for that. I don't like it personally because I for whatever fucking reason the texture doesn't make me want to swallow it. Um, but
I I
ground beef and
love
noodles
butter,
is with
salt,
elbows.
and pepper.
Yeah.
Butter and salt and pepper is all you need.
Oh,
Actually,
And then
butter,
just a
salt,
little.
pepper,
you're a
and egg
fucking
noodles is a
pleb.
fairly decent meal in and of itself.
That is. Egg
That's
noodles
true.
are another one that you'd be surprised people can fuck up.
Yeah, I mean that one's one you can even leave on a while.
Yeah, it's right. They're already cooked. God damn it.
Yeah. Oh, and just to drop the egg noodle knowledge here, when you make your egg noodles or anything you're making with egg noodles, make the egg noodles completely by themselves. Get
Yeah,
everything else ready, and then put them in when they're just al dente, and then you don't get starchy broth or souffle or whatever the fuck you're making.
right.
Mm,
I have learned this by
I have to.
making soups. Now that said, if you want an incredibly hearty soup and you're a little bit more poverty mindset, then don't drain the
One
water.
pot.
Yeah, do yourself a one pot with egg noodles and like a can of mixed vegetables and a can of cubed chicken, and you're gonna actually have well that and like a can of chicken broth or
put that
something,
stuff in the freezer.
and you're gonna have like a lot of food that's going to be good. It's not going to be the prettiest soup because it's going to be kind of milky, but it's going to be hearty as fuck, and it's actually going to taste pretty okay, other than being a little
Yeah.
starchy.
So like unless you have one of those dietary concerns, like throwing out the tossing the noodle water for a soup seems just silly to me. But I mean, I get the whole presentation thing, yada yada.
Well, yeah, it's really too kind of a
I,
matter of flavor. If you're wanting to get rid of the starchiness, then there's really no other
Yeah.
option.
yeah, yeah. I'm
Soup are
sorry. If
weird.
I'm gonna do it, my
I
pasta
just
is
don't like soup in
never
general. So
Oh, well, that's fair. Well, that's because you're always leaving the noodles in too long.
no, I don't make the soup I don't like either. I just don't really make them in general.
Well, it's because you're not having good soups. See?
And,
You've
well, I'm weird. I like to have things separately on my plate. If there are people out there who would be happy to put everything into a fucking blender and then turn to you and say, "Well, it goes to the same place anyway," and then eat it all.
Yep. No, that's a normal thing. That's the touch of the tism kicking off.
That's fair.
I
Well,
do
I
the
like a
same
good
thing.
soup. What can I say?
I was routine. I am still routinely ridiculed for that, where everything has don't let the chicken touch the noodles kind of thing. It's like, oh, fuck you people. I'm enjoying
I
my
am a
chicken, then I'm
firm
enjoying my
believer
noodles.
my liquids should be cold, my food should be hot, and therefore salads are an abomination and soups are an abomination.
What, you don't like a hot salad?
So
No.
so there's a. All right, I can go different places. So if you get yourself some good romaine, and what you do is you get yourself your chopped romaine, you put it around the outside of the bowl. You take
You
some
fire up the
longleaf
grill.
romaine. You take some longleaf romaine, you put it in the center, and then you put your grilled chicken in the middle,
No, I thought
chopped up
where do you,
already, pre-chopped.
where's the part where you grill the romaine lettuce? Come on, you're missing out.
Why the fuck would you grill romaine lettuce?
It's a thing.
The only
Oh, it's so fucking weird.
Yes.
It's like, I understand toasted buns, but like grilled lettuce?
Yeah, no,
Why?
that's for real a thing. Like grilled salads are a thing now, and it's not the meat that's getting grilled.
That's so dumb.
so
I also understand using banana leaf.
Just because liberals get bored doesn't mean they always come up with good ideas.
It's so fucking dumb. Like I understand banana leaf as a wrap. Like I think it's stupid and that would make something that's overly chewy. But you know what? You do you, friend. But like grilling your salad, like this is undeniably
got
also from people who are
something
worried about
happening.
global warming.
I'll be right back.
Okay, that's not good.
Oh,
What?
it's you.
I heard beeping.
Put it.
Eh.
Oh, okay. It was the extra UPS.
Okay.
It just needed to be reset. I have the 3D printer is functional and a full machine now. I haven't done my test
Very
prints,
good.
but it's all together. I've got it on the backup the backup UPS thing.
I will not be doing 3D printer work until the humidity levels drop in my area.
That's understandable.
You have air conditioning, right?
I actually so as much as we can
No.
banter
Okay.
about no, I have air conditioning. I can.
Good.
But as much as we banter and any proper engineer respects the hierarchy of being amazing at technology, I actually try to live a semi-naturalist life. And so I actively try to minimize my usage of materials that I don't need to use. Obviously, it's modern. You know, I use my dishwasher, my appliances, and all the other stuff that I do. But when it comes to something like heating and air conditioning, I don't need to climate control my environment unless it's going to get in the way of me making money or, being a functional human being. So the only place that I actually tend to control for temperature is my bedroom, despite the fact that I have working AC that is central air and the whole thing.
Well, you know
Now,
that
maybe
AC's
finish
primary
everything
purpose. You know what the AC's primary purpose is, right? It's not temperature control. It's
giving
humidity
natural. Well, yeah, that's true. But yeah, no, I don't. Need
the conditioning part is the humidity, right? So, well, I mean, I get it.
Plus, National Grid is a money grubbing piece of shit, and I don't like to fund them and their craziness.
I mean, it sounds like at this point you should potentially invest in some solar panels and some batteries, buddy.
Yeah, kind of does.
Why?
I mean, well, you could
If you're not gonna hook
you could
directly
always
into a
just build your
nuclear
own
plant.
power plant. Go for a small one in the backyard.
So I would,
That
but
makes
the
NRL really
NRC,
upset.
Yeah, I mean, you'll
yeah,
probably have to talk to
unfortunately.
IATSE or whatever, but whatever.
Unfortunately, the
Don't be
NRC
that guy.
limits what you can do, and the fundamental problem is always purchasing sufficient fissionable material for a legitimate reactor.
Well, there
It
was
is
that one guy
unfortunate.
who had a bunch of those smoke detectors.
That's
That-
bullshit. It's a bullshit story.
No, it's
Everybody
not.
fucking cites
It's
it
a
like,
fucking super fund. Look, I
I
don't
mean,
think
he
he ever
did it,
reached
but he didn't
criticality.
actually reach criticality or anything.
I don't think he ever could have reached criticality. But what I do know is that it became a Superfund site and that he went to fucking prison for it, and it's hilarious.
Yeah,
The guy,
because americium is fucking scary shit.
it is. He managed to get like a lot of it. Like I don't think he ever got like a
Right.
blink event either. But I think that the fact that you could detect the radiation from his house well away from his neighborhood was pretty scary stuff.
I mean, that's not as scary as you might think, right? So we actually have
Well,
radiation
so
detectors nationwide,
yeah,
specifically to test for this kind of shit.
right. I'm just saying, like the fact that he was able to build up enough of it to go that far above background. Like the scary part isn't necessarily the americium; it's that he was doing this that poorly, like
Eh.
the way he did it. Like that's
Oh
like
yeah,
he's doing
that's
this shit on
crazy.
his fucking doing this shit on a busted stove range in his backyard shed.
Yep.
And I'll actually
Yeah.
look
No, I
up
mean
that story so I can put a
it
link
is
for people interested, because it's
I
it is terribly unfortunate
I
that
think
that
V
the
Monster
NRC
42 did a
prevents you
video on
from
him.
building legitimate. It's just unfortunate that we can't build nuclear reactors. I can't put solar panels on my house. I looked to do it,
that was David
Yeah,
not
Hahn,
because I
right?
like solar.
yeah, I mean, it's Han. Yeah,
Yeah. Okay. Oh, that was. Yeah.
he's that guy. Yeah, he should look like a crack addict if you look at him in the photos. But that's because he had a
What was his
radiation.
overall goal?
His overall goal is to make a functional nuclear reactor in his backyard.
Yeah, I'll put a link to the wiki,
Oh yeah, you can't do
which
that.
it's wiki, but
Like,
it's for a dead guy who's not on the right, so they might as well just have correct information.
I'm guessing he probably didn't do anything in a glove bag, and
no,
he probably
no,
didn't have
everything was in
radiation.
the open. Everything was in the open on a stove range that he had salvaged from a junkyard in a shed.
Well,
Uh,
I mean,
yeah, and so he had no shielding.
you could probably get some americium and get to the point where I don't know. I'd have to go take a look at the fission reaction
Well,
from americium.
you could potentially do it like concentrate and heat the thing so that you would actually get potentially a criticality event. But
No, no,
like,
you're not going to get a criticality event from heating fucking
well, no,
americium.
not
That's
just
no.
heating it, but like you can concentrate it. Like if you get enough sources and you extract them and you put them, like you
Maybe,
could potentially get something.
yeah, not really. So with
Okay,
americium,
I'll defer to
americium
your
is pretty
expertise
much
on this.
it's pretty much an alpha emitter. While there is energy obviously to be given up by the radionuclide, and it's more energy technically than uranium,
Right?
it tends to be an alpha emitter, and so
I
you'd
thought it was
have
more
to get a
beta.
neutron
Okay.
source there, and then you'd have to confirm that the neutron source. I'd have to look at the actual thing and find out what its neutron reactions are. So basically, I'd have to basically go pull a chart on the nuclides and go look at it. But the reason that we use the isotopes that we use, despite the fact we have a whole bunch of other isotopes in circulation, is that uranium has a neutron economy that's positive, and
Right.
most of the other elements do not. And that's actually like the reason that molten salt reactors or thorium reactors would work is because thorium, even though it's got a much poorer neutron economy than say uranium, it's still positive. But a lot of the other stuff is yeah, it'll absorb a neutron and you can cause fission and you can get energy from that. The neutron that gets absorbed, it only produces like 1 point something neutrons or less. So it takes one neutron and it barely emits one neutron during its reaction. And that's one of the problems that you have. So you could probably get some sort of fission thing, but you need to have a neutron source, which would be like a PUBY source or like an americium lithium source. In which case you'd have to physically make that, and then you'd have to target the neutron. Like it would be damn near impossible to get it to go, and it wouldn't be self-sustaining.
Well, that's unfortunate. Or maybe it is fortunate.
Yeah.
Because who knows what the fuck would happen with that.
If the NRC, the DOE, and all the other multi-lettered agencies got out of the way and allowed the private sector to build nuclear reactors as needed, with minimal oversight or whatever, you could probably easily get to the point where we're dropping nuclear reactors in your backyard, right? Like a set of solar panels for my house, fully subsidized, was something like $42,000 or 24 for like I think a 10 kilowatt system was what I spec'd out. And that's what the subsidies brings it from 42 to 24. Thank you, taxpayers. If I turned around and did a nuclear system, you're probably not looking at much more than 20-ish K, 20 to 30K to put in a full nuclear system. And it would sit there running silently for 20, 30 years. And we used to build these things. They were off-the-shelf reactors. It doesn't require a ton of materials. The bulk majority of your cost is going to be sinking something along the lines of your septic system and a leach field, which is typically only $10,000. So the actual reactor might be $10,000 to $15,000 for a 10 kilowatt system, and the other stuff would be whatever, and your fuel would be like negligible because uranium's cheap right now.
Yeah,
and here's the thing,
but it's quite plentiful.
If you had battery operation and you plugged into the grid, like if you're not using 10 kilowatts and you and say you build your house so that you have a peak load of like 20 kilowatts, but that's if like everything's fucking running at once. So like say you had a bunch of people over, you could easily battery bank a lot of that and just sell to grid and probably recoup that over the lifetime.
Well, that's one of those things when you start
including
talking
inflation
about
and such, you would at least definitely recoup the dollar value selling to grid over lifetime. That's long enough on the inflation basis alone. That's long enough to recoup the dollar value number. The value, the monetary value number. So normalizing for inflation, you'd probably be able to recoup on a 10 or 20 year basis. I think if you're selling back.
Well, I mean, I'm
maybe.
spitballing here that it's $10,000 to dig a pit, and $15,000 for small tractor size reactor.
Yeah.
Right, like a little micro reactor, because they're about lawn tractor size, and that's like $5,000 to build that with a full working engine. And a nuclear reactor is simpler than an internal combustion engine. There's less gears, less motors. It's literally going to be it just sits there.
Well,
and
plus
it's they've
made them much more efficient in like the passive operation of the cooling system these days.
Yep.
For a micro reactor is so efficient and it's so simple. Like the biggest thing you got to worry about is where do you put the energy when it comes out of it at this point. And like I said, if you just sell back the grid or you dump the battery.
Well, not to mention that alone would, fortify any grid tremendously as well. Just having that many extra energy sources just always
one of the things. Absolutely. This is one of the ideas I had for hydrogen energy back in high school was a distributed system, and so the thing about it was it didn't matter where the electricity came from to do the hydrolysis. To basically give effectively the most efficient chemical battery we have is going to be hydrogen in this sense that it's got the most bang for buck, and you can pull from any source. So the obvious source at the time was solar because it comes down to the earth for free. But again, the idea was it didn't matter where the electricity came from. That was someone else's problem. Like I designed in high school the solar reactor that would do that too.
The issue with solar is that you don't get a particularly large amount, and it decays. Well, that's the reason why.
That was the reason why it was. The idea was to store the energy chemically. Was to just have it accumulate.
if we change to like sunk little microreactors for like nuclear
Yeah.
stuff, you could easily put in 20 years worth of fuel at once, and you'd get
Oh
like
yeah.
and I mean, like you could generate everything that you wanted to do because you can either, when it comes to thermal systems
You'd have
operation,
to be
right? You can
encouraged to
either
do more with your electricity. Like the idea that you have to scale back anything with all these Green New Deal nut jobs. If everybody had a nuclear reactor, you'd be obligated to use that extra energy somewhere else
Yeah, we'd have to be thinking
somehow.
of, hey, how are we going to use this extra energy? Well, why don't we start turning ocean water
well,
into potable water?
Shit like that,
not
yeah.
necessarily, right? Like you could,
Well,
there's a whole bunch of stuff that you could do with it,
Oh, there's all sorts
or
of shit.
you just don't burn the fuel, right? Like all you have to do is turn
right,
around and decrease the reactor rate when it's not needed. Like
right.
nuclear reactors, as much as people sit there and like we run them as baseload sources because we throw billions of dollars at these things, and so
Right. I mean,
not
they can
running
be
them.
dynamic. It's just that like it's
Right.
simpler. It's simpler to like even though like small adjustments don't take like 3 weeks to happen. Small
Yeah.
adjustments do take some time to happen. They're not immediately responsive. Like
No,
so
no,
there's
but I
there's
mean,
some immediate response, but like they're not immediate responsive. So
the way you handle that and the way that most people have looked into doing that is doing like a flywheel system.
right,
So a
or
flywheel
just like a
system
battery or
will
something.
will probably not a battery because there's a lot of efficiency losses there, and on
Fair enough.
top of that, it doesn't store a lot of energy. But either way, like you basically all you have to do is put in a buffer that sits there and compensates for the downtime. And as if we were designing these micro reactors, we could easily get into a point where we were designing and developing them to scale up and scale down at a much faster rate. Probably not on demand, right? I think the only source that really
Right.
does on demand power with like no scale up factors is hydro. I think that's the only one that can because all they have to do is open the gate a little bit further and the turbine spins faster.
Well, so
But
they
everything
don't
else,
do it's not it's that's still not like immediate. They still have to buffer
yeah,
that to a
Yeah,
degree.
stuff still has to spin up.
The one that
it
is most
does.
immediate is so hydro is pretty immediate, but I mean battery buffering in general is a necessity. Well, so when I say battery here, I mean energy storage in that sense.
Yeah,
But
whatever the
previously I
battery,
meant
No,
chemical battery.
whatever
I
battery
get it. I
medium.
mean, the
Previously I
problem,
was referring to
whenever I
chemical,
hear
but now
batteries,
any
typically when it comes to like batteries, while you could that could easily be the system and maybe that's instantaneous and all that other stuff. The problem is that
yeah.
most chemical storage is very expensive. So
Well,
the reason
yeah.
that it's expensive is that you have to anything that stores and releases energy degrades over time.
Well, so here's the
You
thing.
can
Iron
release
aluminum
energy
phosphate is actually pretty advanced these days. That's the kind of the extremely expensive truck battery that you can get. Like they're basically they're almost solid state, and they pack as much punch as a lead acid battery, if not more, but they can completely deep cycle
Mm.
without having any dendrite issues or major damage. The problem is they're not as energy dense as say lithium. They're heavy batteries, but if you're just using them
Oh
in
yeah.
place, they're basically not going to degrade over a 30-year lifespan. Like
Well, lithium's
you could just stack those things.
I mean, and maybe I know that I've seen the last time I looked in batteries, right? And I always periodically try to go into like renewable shit because everybody wants
Yeah,
to talk about it, and they always want to cite batteries, so you got to be somewhat proficient in it. But every single time I've looked at battery technology, and I think we talked about this a while back, battery
yeah.
technology is basically not really significantly advanced. They get minor increases in storage per
Well,
unit mass or per unit
so the
volume,
major
but it
advance
doesn't
that's
really
happened.
significantly advance.
So the major advance that's happened is I can't remember his fucking name. I should remember it because I was talking about him enough. The guy from MIT with his liquid batteries, liquid sorry molten salt batteries. So those have actually advanced to the point where there's a major company that's involved with him
Oh, really?
that's actually selling. There's actually selling capacity now. They have
That's
a
interesting.
unit. They have a unit that I think is in pilot. There's a company that has a full. So you know how Tesla has their battery pods. They have a competitor
Yeah.
pod that's the molten salt battery. But theirs isn't
Hmm.
scaled the same as Tesla's, so it has a slight disadvantage. So it's one of those pro con things where it's kind of they swung for a different kind of parallelism. So so they don't get the same
Well,
kind
that's
of extreme scales that Tesla can do out of the box.
and that's the problem, right? Like lithiums are they tend to be their physical properties. Lithium batteries tend to be a lot better than other physical properties for batteries.
Well, so the thing is, the
even
molten
though they're
salt batteries
expensive.
are very, very good. So the thing is that his pods, you can't like scale them the same way because of the way they're connected up inside, not because of the way that they operate physically. So that's the difference. Like they have to run at a high temperature, but they're well insulated and so on. So it's not like you have to wait for it to warm up. That's the sunk cost at the very beginning in terms of time. It warms up and then it's good to go 24/7 pretty much, largely from internal heating from the electricity. That's how good the insulation is. So like the thing can operate just fine. It's just that the way that it's wired up inside doesn't allow it to have the same capability in a technical sense capability as the Tesla battery packs. Like they can't just instantly scale the power output, but it's entirely due to the wiring. It's not down to the physical structure of the battery. But again, the major difference between these here is that the Tesla batteries come from batteries that are designed to be mobile, the lithium-ion batteries, whereas the molten salt batteries are designed to be there once you put them there, without moving.
They're an installation, and understandably so. But beyond that too, they're going to necessarily last a lot longer and maintain that efficiency.
They don't have that degree. They don't make dendrites. Period. They can't.
Yeah,
lithium.
they just
lithium.
Can't.
Lithium batteries degrade in 7 to 10 years. I mean, and I would actually say that if you're cycling it regularly, you get a lot more degradation because they just don't hold up well.
You need to stay between about 28, well 70 and 30 if you can help it, but like 20 and 80% is kind of the hard limits you should be cycling between if you're doing common cycling. If you're gonna do just top ups, just hang out at your either like don't go below 90% or keep it on the charger. But if you're gonna be doing regular like long-term cycling, between 70 and 30 is the best way to do it. So just stay in that mid-range, and the dendrites will be abated for the most part. Although Tesla has some major advances in removing dendrites, which should be interesting coming into the future market.
But
not to mention too, solid-state lithium batteries.
Hopefully.
I'm skeptical.
I would love to see it happen because it would be great. No, there are solid state batteries, and solid state batteries are insane because you can do things like physically damage them like a lot. Like you can take chunks out and they don't just explode. Oftentimes what happens is the area bordering the chunk like shorts out and fries, but then like that's it. The rest of it maintains capacity. It's crazy. They're just really low energy density. That's a really big problem there.
Well, that's a problem with all batteries, right? Especially if we're going to tie it into any system. But yeah, and going back to the original concept, right? Whether you use a battery, whether you use a flywheel, whatever system, you need a storage and a buffer.
Sure. Yeah, of course.
And I'm still very skeptical on batteries and battery technology, MSR batteries or whatever. And that's just because, again, there is consistent failure to meet performance metrics in that field.
Yeah.
They
like I said, there's aluminum iron phosphate. So the aluminum iron phosphate batteries, they have great performance characteristics, low energy density, like any other battery. So basically, they're fantastic. So they're great for trucks because economy of scale. They're already hauling large loads, so the size of the battery is not going to be the 80th weld in the barrel, so to speak.
Yep.
But for like putting in, like if you have an APC, like a UPC at home, or sorry, UPS at home, APC or UPS, then if you ever need to like swap batteries on those, an aluminum iron phosphate battery makes a hell of a lot more sense than a lead acid battery or any other kind of chemical storage. Largely because of the higher performance characteristic of them. If you expect to have any kind of major need for them, they will deep cycle without inducing major damage to the battery. So you can sit there for the full time that the UPS is supposed to be rated for without having a problem.
There are a variety of different technologies, battery technologies out there. There's a lot of stuff that's been proposed, but generally when you start looking at the cost curve, right, and the efficacy curve, you can get stuff that is more stable over a longer period of time, but it tends to cost a lot more, take up a lot more space, and be heavier. Right? It literally attenuates
keep in mind,
the energy through mass.
Keep in mind that the issue, like I said, the major inefficiency that comes with something like aluminum iron phosphate is the weight of the battery, not the size of it. So it's definitely an energy density issue, not like the energy mass thing. So it's however competitive against lead acid batteries, except for the cost. The cost per unit energy density is larger, but if you look at it over the lifetime, but the cost per unit energy density per unit lifetime of the battery is lower. It's just that it has that high upfront cost. So if you scale it by the risk, if you scale it by economic risk, then it is about cost competitive. But if you look at it just on a unit cost basis instead of a risk cost basis, then it is better. So, unfortunately, because batteries can fail over lifetime, they're not so they don't fail as often, but when they fail, they're just as bad as any other battery that fails. They're dead. So, you can't really compete with that part.
Most of the stuff has it's got planned obsolescence on it, right?
Let's be honest about that. Let's be honest about that. The Westinghouse disaster is a common thing today still.
Yeah, I am more than happy to entertain new technologies, but what I have consistently seen is overpromise, underdeliver, never actually hitting the metrics that they claim they're going to hit every single time. And again, you're always balancing cost, size, and weight.
Fusion is always 50 years away, so of course we're going to need batteries today.
Say that again?
I said fusion is 50 years away, so of course we need batteries today.
No,
that's just the joke.
Yeah, that's the meme, but no.
Well, I mean, apparently, purportedly,
fusion is like 10 years away. Please God.
Is it Lockheed Martin says that they're on track for their commercial rollout? I'm pretty sure.
Oh, are they going to finally fucking do it?
No, I mean it's been something that's been kicking around for a while, right? So have they
hit Unity yet? Is what I want to know. Have they at least hit Unity yet?
It depends, right? So if you start talking about the government labs, I don't think that the government labs have hit Unity. However, I believe Lockheed Martin's Skunk Works has an alternate fusion reactor. I've seen this pop up a couple times. And the first time it popped up was 2014, 2015. And they said they were hoping to have a prototype built by 2020, and then they were hoping to enter commercial production 5 years later. And it's a slightly different way of doing fusion.
So I knew that they were going to try and build something. I didn't know if they actually had hit Unity yet.
I don't know if they've hit Unity, and I don't think they're going to tell anybody, right? So if they're correct in the way they're doing it, right? Because they're not going at it the same traditional way that people. It's not even like it's like fusion, but it's barely fusion. If that makes any sense, it's like lightning in a bottle fusion that they're going after. So I don't know whether they've hit Unity yet, but there was an announcement not too long ago that they were heading towards commercial production. It was
that tells me that they
last
few weeks. Unity.
Maybe.
Although that also tells you that they if that's a 5-year venture before they can get to market, then like that also tells me that they might not have hit Unity and they're just hoping it does hit Unity by then, which would be such a Lockheed Martin move.
They are using a completely different technology, and I remember reading what it was at some point, but it's like they simultaneously induce compression and a plasma, and it does this half and half thing that induces fusion.
Yeah, it's just like there's the one with that weird shaped cavity, and it has that rod inside it with the weird thing on the end.
That thing.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah, I know what you're talking about,
and
and
somehow
it's interesting.
Okay,
it,
I think I've found an
it's an
article on
interesting
that
design.
actually. The cat concept, compact advanced tokamak.
No, so this thing looks like almost like a
No.
like the bulb for a flower petal. Oh, sorry, for a flower that's opening. Like on the
Yeah.
inside, and it's got like this it's got this one tube, a hollow tube that goes in that injects the helium isotope, and it uses an electrical pulse to induce a plasma at the end of the tube
Right.
that will also inertially confine and cause fusion, and then the
So
heat
so
is pulled out
essentially
around by the shell
essentially
or the gas.
essentially they where traditionally what they've tried to do is do like a fuel pellet and fire lasers to induce confinement, or heat every single molecule in the reactor up to temperature to induce fusion as a process of doing it. This is saying, okay, we don't need to heat everything up there. We just need to induce an electric spark, which requires X amount of energy, and then of that
Yeah.
energy, we'll get Y energy out of it. And so they should be able to build these things, but they're like benchtop scale. So
Yeah,
they're not
but they're
these
also
big
scalable.
massive things. Yeah, and that's the thing is they're not as big, they're not as massive, and there's not as many problems if they work. But
Yeah.
this was all I'm pretty sure it was a Skunkworks thing, and we haven't like they're not too open on the details.
So the idea is that they feed a gas in from one. So it's a tube and tube entrance and exit in the middle of it,
Yep.
and then the housing looks kind of like a flower that hasn't opened yet. And so the tubes come in through the base of that kind of bulb. Um, the electrical pulses between the outer tube and the bulb shell, the inner shell. The gas comes in through the inner tube, and there's a pulse that's discharged, causes like there's like a funky little manifold on the end of it that actually shapes the plasma.
Hmm.
There's
Yep.
like a discharge that happens, causes a plasma there. The shape of the discharge around the manifold is what causes the confinement, and the fact that the plasma is transient, it induces basically a confinement and pressure, causes diffusion right there and then. And then the effluent gas is pulled out, heat's extracted. The shell has a coolant system, so heat's extracted there. So the idea is that you need to get more, you need to get to over unity that way. Um, for people who are listening, the important difference here between when we say unity in this context versus the say debunked
Talk Max.
cold fusion kind of craziness. When they say unity, what they're talking about is total unity of the system for a closed thermodynamic system. We're talking about an open thermodynamic system where the fuel you put in loses energy, and the process produces the energy from it, and you get more energy out of the fuel than you put in to the process. So
Yeah.
the whole system is still thermodynamically consistent, but the unity part here is kind of your bang for buck, not your thermodynamics unity.
And it also doesn't break thermodynamics.
Exactly. Like that's the
No.
important thing there is it's the whole point is to get more energy out of the system than you put into it to begin with. That's all fuel based systems are supposed to work.
I mean, it doesn't technically get more energy in than because if you consider the energy that's the potential energy that fuel. But
right. So the idea is
at the same time,
get more
taking,
energy out of the fuel than it takes to run the system.
That's
Just
correct.
A clearer way to say it.
Yes.
Not
But that's
0 point.
I think that's
just as a by the by. That's another thing entirely.
Yep. So I think that's
a
pretty
video.
close.
A video on the vacuum state, changing the vacuum state of the universe. Hold on, I mean, it just came out today from PBS Spacetime, which I do like as a show. So vacuum decay is an example of how a change in 0 point energy would be extra fun for the entire universe. So the vacuum energy is the 0 point energy, that just for the whole universe, not just for a single atom. So I haven't had a chance to watch this episode, but my guess is that it's going to be extra fun for listeners to to enjoy. So here's that. I'll just talk the link into our staff chat.
Oh, cool. I'll throw that in for everybody.
So I gotta be watching this, and Kurskazag also did a good video on vacuum decay. I think it's called like how to destroy the whole universe or something. But it was a similar concept.
I'll
But yeah,
definitely put that in there because vacuum decay is a very interesting concept and is also
let me
tied
put it like this.
kind of to the Big Bang.
If you could extract energy from the 0 point energy, if it was possible to do so, this is what would happen. You would single-handedly destroy everything. It would not be a good thing to be able to do that, because that would mean that the vacuum state of the universe could be lower, and we're at a metastable state now, which would be really bad. The nice thing, though, is that nobody would have a chance to get upset at you because everyone would be dead before they even knew that it happened.
I guess that's something.
The propagation from that single event outward would be at the speed of light, which means that your 80 millisecond requirement in your head would never happen. It would just be fascinating, dead.
I will argue that that is with our current understanding of physics and containment, and it is entirely possible that with more advanced containment and a better grasp on the physics, we could easily get to a point where that becomes an energy source. That would essentially be the next tier beyond fusion.
Sure.
The next tier beyond fusion is using the star.
Well, not really. That's just fusion on a much, much bigger scale. If we're being completely honest.
The point here being to harvest it instead.
I don't think that we're going to get to a point where we're using. So the actual energy scale is like chemical energy or what is it? It's like stored energy, chemical energy, nuclear energy from fission, nuclear energy from fusion. Then comes antimatter, and then comes 0 point. Right, that's the energy scale.
So that's the thing: is 0 point is not exactly something that you can quantify in that sense because you don't know how much is extractable. Period.
Well, and
because it's an all or nothing thing.
Yeah, but the amount
you have to give back the
energy
you borrow is the problem.
Unit mass.
Here's the thing:
everything
up until that point has an entropy state post extraction of energy that allows it to exist basically in perpetuity. You're decreasing entropy not just locally but globally. So the problem with, say, extracting anything out of a 0 point regime is that you have to give it back. There is no lower entropy state where you keep the energy. There's no way that it is diffused out further and increases the kind of disorderness of the universe. So, it's something you give back.
That's not entirely true, right? Because we could generate the idea and the theory is that the P membrane operates with oscillating waves, and that there is that on the average the actual energy is 0, but there is both positive and negative energy, and we just simply don't have a concept for negative energy. So we could, in theory, figure out how to balance the two things and generate stuff off of that.
It's funny because there are certain regimes in physics where there is something that is like negative energy. But
there's more
for instance, the ergosphere of a rotating black hole, there's a regime in which where you send in a bit of mass that is separable, and then you drop a little piece of the mass into the black hole, and the other piece comes zooming out. You gain energy overall in that mechanism because the black hole loses some of its angular momentum and the energy associated with it when it absorbs that mass.
One of the
example of that. It's just one example.
A more down-to-earth example is a similar concept associated with the Earth and the reason we have a molten core, right?
Yeah, or the Earth and pendulum that you try to keep still.
Yep. So I mean, it may very well come down to the point where we have that, but I don't think when we start talking about the scale, right? You got fission, you got fusion, then antimatter, then 0 point, right? And
Well,
I
I
don't
just don't
think
see
that
like I just don't see 0 point being something where we can scale. So here's the thing:
well, I mean,
if you couple something
it's
like zero
beyond us
point with an
right
exit,
now.
well, if say you coupled with our current understanding, say you coupled 0 point with an existence energy source, it might be possible on a small scale to pull and hold energy at the cost of energy, um, and have the energy that you give back in that interaction be from a different source that is slower or more consistent or what have you. There might be a way to basically have a short-term boost that comes out, but still kind of pay
Yep.
that debt back over time without like
And
violating thermo there or
well,
quantum
again,
mechanics because that's where it comes from.
thermo only applies to the closed system that we have, which is our universe, or the mostly closed system.
Well, again,
We
the
also
local system in that case has to also obey the laws of open thermo. You know, because remember that the open thermo is process thermo. It doesn't require the entire universe to
and
understand
that may also be the route by which we produce antimatter and we give back a portion of matter,
Right.
Like we take stuff
Yeah,
that's useless to us and we trade that for energy.
right.
That's another possibility, right?
So,
So
so
there's a lot of
that's
different ways
the
it could
thing.
work.
Yeah, like I said, it doesn't.
But in any
It's not.
case, that's way beyond us in
Yeah,
terms of our ability to
Well,
control
we're
that.
not going to be alive to see it, sure, but maybe someone in the future
well,
can
not
listen
with
to
that
this and
kind of
say how
attitude, you
stupid.
won't.
Well, I'm just saying,
Yeah.
someone in the future will be able to listen back and be like, "Wow, how stupid Craig was."
You know what, Craig? I get that experience almost every week.
I don't know.
You,
I think that I need to increase your level of existential dread in your life.
I am good with most of my existential dread. I have plenty of existential dread.
well, then
Well, won't
you'll.
it
I
be
just
the
get to
day?
enjoy.
Won't it be the day if solar eventually just outcompetes nuclear on Earth, and you're just sitting there just pulling your hair out of your legs, going, "I fucking knew
You
these
know what?
idiots would go this way." Now I say this, but I
So
never said
again,
how. It could be because they just shut all the nuclear off.
I and that's going to be kind of the thing. I think that's far more likely. But frankly, again,
Right.
I'm still rooting for societal collapse. Like I really truly think that we're headed down that path. I think we're going towards the dark ages.
That's not
Uh,
really going to happen. Now, societal collapse, we're going to be looking at
you
something
don't
very
think
weird very
you don't
soon.
think dark ages?
No, not at
You don't
all.
think dark ages?
No,
No.
but I'm an optimist, and I'm an idiot with how much I'm an optimist. I can easily admit that.
I am.
I
I'm fairly pessimistic. I just try to be optimistic, but in all honesty, I don't see that as being a very feasible turn of events. Now, U.S.
so
no
so
longer
I
being the global
see.
hegemon, I see that as an incredible likelihood at this point.
I'm pretty sure we're already
Yep.
there if we can't get 10,000 Americans out of Afghanistan.
Yeah,
Yep.
actually, yeah. As
Well,
of this week,
I
I
would
would
I
say
would
we are no
argue
longer the
I would
global
argue
hegemon.
with the amount of money that they're printing and the fact that they've lost control of pretty much everything and the fact that the narrative is collapsing in real time, which is just absolutely delicious.
Oh, multiple
I think
narratives,
that we
we
may
should
end
say
up
even.
That's the worst part, isn't
we
it?
may end
Like
up
every bit of it is just Schadenfreude out the wazoo. But the problem is, it's coming
yep.
back to bite us here.
Yeah, it's like,
Well, but
oh, look,
yeah,
that house is
and
on fire. Oh, right, yeah, we live in that house.
but it's going to be
But
just like it's
it's
just going to be like Venezuela, right? Like there are our
I hope
currency's
not
going to be
that bad.
worthless. And that's why I think we're going to go dark ages. I think it is.
So
I'm very happy.
Venezuela is I need to remind people is an economy that is so shit that they literally emptied the landfills for home heating fuel to be able to heat their homes and cook. They burned all the trash in the landfills, and
Yep.
this isn't that this isn't that long ago. This is like just like last year, the year before
Well, and
that.
So you're
Like my
saying
girlfriend,
that Venezuela is one of the cleanest countries on the face of the earth?
well, they just have their trash
There's
better distributed. Like my girlfriend
But
lives on the border near there, and they had basically trash fire clouds for several months, and then they just went away. And the reason why they went away is because they ran out of trash.
well, and this
The
is
landfills are
kind of
empty.
what I think. I think with the current policy that we have, I think we're going to head that way. I really do. Like we've already
I don't
exported
see
our
that.
manufacturing capability.
I don't see that
We've
happening
already
for the whole country. I certainly see that possibly happening for say a cesspit like New York
Yeah, I can see this in
or most of
regions.
California.
I mean, New York's
I don't see
not
that
going to get
happening.
any better unless they get Sliwa and fucking Giuliani in to take the places of their awful people.
I see maybe them blowing the bridges and watching Manhattan eat itself.
Yeah,
Oh yeah. Well,
there are two options for New
I
York:
mean,
either
maybe
escape from New
you're
York
correct
or
there.
Sliwa.
The what I see as a possibility is that local governments, you're right, might be intact, but if they keep on deflating or inflating the currency, where it currently is in the path that they're going, that's going to become worthless. Now, conservative regions are
Oh, they're
probably going to be
probably
okay
gonna swap over
because
to crypto. I see
well,
that
I don't know
happening a
if they'd
mile
swap
away.
over crypto. I bet you we'd
The
see barter
Treasury's
before we
already
see
the
crypto.
Treasury is already trying to go that way. Remember,
Yeah, they are.
like
They're trying to put
the bitch in
together
charge.
a U.S. crypto now, like an official one.
The bitch in charge decided to come down on Bitcoin, but only because she was financially invested in an alternative that the U.S. government was looking to appropriate.
Hmm.
Like it's. I mean, most of the money is electric already, but they're just gonna look at better ways to secure it with the crypto, and then they're gonna ban the rest of crypto, or they're gonna try to. But that's not gonna work. I mean, the
No,
U.S. dollar is already slipping in that fashion as it is. And as it
genie's out of
becomes
the
less
bottle with
relevant,
crypto.
crypto is gonna replace it as long as there's power. Now, when you run out of power, that's gonna be the problem.
Well, and
And
that's going to
by
be the
power, I mean
thing, right?
electricity.
That's I know what you mean, and that's why I'm saying I don't think
Right.
crypto will be the viable currency, and that's
Well,
predominantly because
certainly
at
there's
the
going to
rate
be
that our
cash
current
equivalent.
it's so
That's what I
a
see happening. Is it's going to become the new gold standard in effect. It's going to end up being
that
just like
that only
a cash
works
representative of a
if you
bank's
have
crypto.
that only works if you have enough time to phase one in versus the other, and we don't. I
Right.
don't think we're on that kind of a timeline. If we're in a compressed
Okay.
timeline, then it will inflate faster than you can pay your power bills, and as soon as it
Sure.
inflates faster than you can pay your power bills, you're no longer able to afford the electricity that would allow you to utilize crypto.
Right.
So
Well, it's funny. Recently, people were touting Democrat talking points, and one of them was that the wages of Americans have gone up. It's like, well, if you look at the adjusted figure, where if you look at the actual value the dollars represent, no, they have gone down
Oh yeah.
Yep.
by a lot.
It's
Like I
what,
said,
2 or
it's like
3%?
prices haven't gone up that much. Yes, they have.
Yeah.
No, boys. You saved 16 cents on your July 4th barbecue because of Biden.
Yeah, I mean, it did cost
Now,
me $1 more per
Steve,
gallon in
items.
gas to drive to it, but yeah.
I can't wait to find out what my Thanksgiving dinner savings are going to be because those are going to be lit.
Oh yeah, there's. Oh, we can only imagine how much you'll be saving by then.
Right. Like we're going to be truly at like I'm not going to make this as a legit prediction. But as a joke, right? We'll have roasted maggot and whatever casserole.
Oh my god!
And that'll be a
Eat
whopping.
the bugs, live in a pod.
You'll have saved $300 on your maggot casserole because last year it was a specialty dish and this year it'll be commonplace.
Oh, true.
Oh my god!
Hmm.
Yeah, just eat your maggot.
In any case,
go ahead.
it is that time, boys. I am mid critique, so. I unfortunately, a whole bunch of people didn't listen to me a year ago, and so they are dealing with the repercussions, and I have to deal with them dealing with their repercussions. So, it's a lovely day for me to go back to work again, but I need to be on my A game.
I was right. By the way, you over there.
Actually,
I was also right.
It's really funny, right? Like, So we do this critique process, and the critique
Right.
process is supposed to be like lessons learned and everything. And so I was asked to submit my lessons learned, and I was like, submit 1 to 2 sentences on what you learned through this whole process. And I was like, I was right. Or actually, I think I wanted to say, I told you so. And
Right.
in the event that you're questioning number one, see number one,
Right.
because it literally was. Like, I went to war with the other department's manager through and to the point where my boss is like, you can't just fight management on this. I'm like, yeah, but they're wrong. and,
Yeah, funny.
and then they
You know what
start
happens if
on
you question
something.
the engineer too much, right? When you question the engineer too much, you get a Challenger disaster. Jesus
Yeah,
Christ.
well, that's what essentially happened. So I mean, granted, like we don't think it's real, right? We don't think it's a real
Right.
crisis. We think it's a fake crisis that they didn't respond to properly, and they freaked out because they weren't expecting it, because they didn't believe it could happen. But
Right.
speaking of TRU contamination, that's what they found, and a whole lopping wad of it, which is fantastic. So I get to deal with explaining to them why it is that every single one of them now needs to wear a respirator and get all these other qualifications and go deep diving. It's good fun.
Oh,
So after
joy.
all this shit about being against masks, you have to sit there and tell them, by the way, boys.
No. Hold on. Masks and respirators are different. Again, we use
I know.
PAPR.
I just gotta enjoy this here. Give me the Schadenfreude for a minute.
Okay,
That
whatever.
sucks so
Whatever.
much.
It's not the
That
same
sucks
thing.
so much for them.
It's not the same thing. Oh, it does. It
I know,
does.
and I freely admit. I freely
sucks.
admit it's not the same
It
thing.
sucks for me too. It sucks for me too because it's like top site priority because they shut down work for everybody. But yeah,
Are you
it was
included
pretty
in that
great.
mandate, by the way?
Which one?
I don't. I feel bad for you on this because it should always be your decision. But like, are you included in the vaccine mandate now? I think they handed down.
As of right now, there is no vaccine mandate,
Okay, good.
right?
Okay.
So what as far as I can tell,
As a federal employee,
Biden
that's
and
the thing.
I'm not a federal employee. I'm technically a federal
Okay.
contractor. So that's the
Good.
first.
Okay.
Oh, much better.
Secondly, as much as there was a vaccine and testing and all the other stuff that he did at his big press conference, nothing has come of that, and that's largely because he didn't actually sign anything saying that had to be done.
Okay.
So what has been happening, and I've been noticing this more and more, is they are sitting there and they're telling you that they have a big stick that they can beat you with, and they aren't actually using the stick because they're not as confident as they think they are.
Well, they're seeing a lot of pushback, which I really approve of. I mean,
Yep.
as much as I would like people
they
to
are.
be more safe, this is kind of a time where you just kind of can't play it safe in the world. You've got to accept a little bit of danger because things got fucked up.
This is going back to like where we were at the very start of this whole conversation. Nothing has really worked out well for them, right? At the end of the day, the vaccines are doing horrible in terms of performance, and that makes it very, very hard to justify this as a public health measure. I'm sure that by the time they get to their 5th or 6th shot, they'll have this all figured out, or cardiac problems.
But there's reasons why boosters are being recommended, and why new vaccines are going to be needed.
Hold on. There is a difference between a booster and a booster at 6 months, right? Like, there's a big difference between, we were 96% effective, and then 3 months later, oh no, sorry, it was 40. Like,
yeah,
you can't.
That 3 months. That 3 months is different. That 3 months matters, and there's a reason for that. That's because they fucked up herd immunity, and they know it. They absolutely fucked that up.
Yeah,
you can hear it, and you can see it in Biden's face how much he fucked up, and that was hilarious to me.
They can say
sucks,
whatever they want,
hilarious.
but the boosters aren't going to change that.
Yeah,
right? The boosters aren't going to.
If you vaccinate for the same virus that's already gone, and then you have the new virus that comes in that replaces it, and you don't vaccinate against that virus, then you're not going to be helping anybody.
And the other issue is that they're not actually testing for the new virus; they're just assuming everybody has it.
No. They are doing serological surveillance. The problem is that they cannot tell the patient.
They cannot. They aren't sitting there
cannot
when they're
tell a
claiming
patient.
COVID cases. They cannot discern between the Delta variant and standard COVID without doing a full genetic profile.
They
don't
do
a genetic
they
profile on
routinely
each one.
do it when they are sent a sample to do COVID testing for a patient at the serology lab. A bit of that sample has its gene sequencing done because that's relatively cheap, and we're in a pandemic, et cetera, et cetera. But the patient is not allowed to know that information because it is not approved by the FDA for patient diagnostics, meaning the patient cannot be told what the results are. But for CDC serological surveillance, that is absolutely what it is used. It is across the board done at this point.
So what I have seen and what I have read is that they are
representative
not
sample levels.
They are. What I have seen.
They said they cannot tell a patient.
Not testing for this. I mean, maybe that's the case. Maybe that's where the discrepancy is coming in.
So before, at the very beginning, when we didn't have as much testing capacity, like it wasn't a blanket test everyone that is getting tested in this secondary setup. It was just do the baseline testing for the EUA diagnostic stuff and get that shit out of the way.
The last I read a few weeks ago, they were claiming the Delta variant without having tests that were distinctly identifying the Delta variant. That was what I saw a few weeks ago. Now, maybe that's changed, or maybe the information I saw was incorrect.
Hospital policy, I can tell you that by hospital policy, they're doing, by compliance with CDC measures, etc. By hospital policy, every COVID test that gets performed, where there is a suspicion of COVID, is automatically tagged for serological surveillance for CDC.
And that only goes to the CDC.
Yeah, okay. so that never goes back the other direction to the patient. Unfortunately, that's
that is kind of shitty, but at least the information is actually out there.
Well, so the thing is that requires FDA approval to tell a patient. It requires FDA approval to tell a patient what the results are, and that's not allowed right now.
I will trust but verify on this. In any case, at the end of the day, it's still totally failed. The vaccine doesn't work, and that's really where we are.
No, so the vaccine worked beautifully for its intended use case, and that is against the wild type virus. It absolutely fucking works. I don't even
think no. And then your IgG levels drop dramatically after a short period of time. It's like 6%.
Yeah, but it's a coronavirus. Of course it does. It's a coronavirus. Yes, that's going to happen because the human body is retarded and it forgets about coronaviruses.
The last I've seen, those folks who actually had a full-blown infection are maintaining immunity 12 months out with no significant drop.
Not in the same way.
So it is only the vaccines. Yes, in the same way. It's like 87% is still there some 12 months after you had a confirmed infection.
I'm sorry. So my brother just sent me a spec sheet for a Cree LED. He said it can take 5 amps at 3.42 volts. Just for an idea of scale, that's turning night into fucking day and a half. That's 17 watts.
Like, that's going to be a powerful tree, right?
Per LED.
Oh.
So Cree. Cree.
Per LED?
CREE LED. So
Cree is like Cree LEDs? And that's per LED.
Per LED.
What the fuck is this thing for? Is it meant to light up Times Square?
So he just said, I need a few for reasons. How many amps can an 18650 put out again? That's like basically as many amps as you want, right?
What?
I think how many what's the output on an 18650 again? Do you know? Like the peak amp?
I don't know off the top of my head.
I just honestly, that
most of
on how much you
deal with is like 480s.
That depends on whether or not you want to use the 18650 again.
Oh, that's going to be quite the impressive tree.
But,
well,
in any case, so going back to your original question, no, the vaccines have failed horribly. From what I've seen, those levels drop off. They don't drop off in those who actually were naturally exposed. but they aren't really. The problem that I'm seeing, well,
We're
I've
talking
seen
about
the serological test
okay.
for the stuff that they were doing where they were tracking that. I've seen that, but I haven't seen that they don't seem to be tagging data for those who were previously exposed in the efficacy of that immunity in the general population like they are with vaccines. But yeah, no, because that's all blowing up in kind of Biden's face right now, I haven't seen anything get implemented. So
Well, like
as
I said
far as I can
before,
tell, there are no mandates.
so I said this last year, pretty early on in I guess you could call this season 1, if you will. Uh, pretty close to episode 1. I think I was talking about
Yeah,
how all these,
we're
the
actually a year in
variants are
now.
coming. Oh
We
shit!
are a
Yeah.
year in.
So like variants were coming, and that
Yep.
when they get far enough away, like we should be treating them each as new viruses because they literally fucking are. And when they get far enough away from the original, it doesn't matter if you had a vaccine or not. If you have any immunity prior, it's no longer going to be useful because it'll be evaded by the new variant. And I've gone into
I have
details
not
with
seen data.
Evan about how the different mechanisms by which there's pros and cons on endogenous versus artificial immunity, and
Yep.
endogenous versus exogenous
I
immunity.
have not seen anything on the specifics related to Delta for unvaccinated individuals who were
Right.
previously exposed.
Well, like I said,
But
priorly, like that is probably not necessarily correlated and tracked data for that intended purpose just
I'm
yet.
sure it isn't.
My guess
because
is
it's
that my
not
guess is that they're
convenient
trying to
politically
collect it.
for PISO.
Well, my guess is that they're
I
trying to
haven't
collect
seen
it.
anything.
They're probably well, you're not going to see it
I'd
until
love
it's
to.
collected. And if they're trying to collect that data and prepare it, my guess is that it's probably not going to look very good. And you could see it in Biden's face today. He knows he fucked up big time. He
Yeah,
knows
I
that
mean
his
that's
ad hit
really
fucked up
saying
big
something
time.
when Biden actually knows something and you can see in his eyes that he
So
comprehends.
I
That's big.
did not see what happened today. So what happened today where you're saying, what's this in reference?
He gave a press conference because Afghanistan's happening. Of course, he has to talk about COVID. So
Yeah.
he gave a press conference about COVID, and you could see it in his face and his eyes, where he's basically begging the public to go get vaccinated. And then, and then at the very end, he switches over. He's like, "All right, now if you're vaccinated, I want to talk to you. Get the booster." It's like, yeah, okay, whatever. But like he's basically sitting there and begging people, and he's right about the fact that the hospitalizations and deaths are pretty much unvaccinated at
That's
this point.
bullshit. That's a bullshit. That is a bullshit statistic.
Pretty much, man.
That is calculated. No, that is calculated from January 1st data onwards. That is not a representative sample, and it is heavily biased in one direction, simply because of the time frame that they chose it. If they were doing this on monthly bases, where we could turn around and take a look at the June data, that would be fine. But the CDC director came out and openly stated that this was collected from January 1st onwards.
Well, see, that's
and
the thing
that's
is hospitals maintain their own data. Hospitals collect their own data. I can tell you that.
And so
I can't tell you. I can't because of who's involved.
Hold on. Uh-huh. I tried to track this thing down too, and I saw some hospital administrator who quoted and said, "Oh yeah, that's what we're kind of hearing, but we don't actually have the data in front of us." So fucking bullshit. Right. If you don't have data,
I do know hospital administrators that have the data in front of them, and I like I said, it's unfortunate because I really want to tell you, and again, please take this as a face value issue or face value information from me, but do the due diligence. Absolutely, you should not just trust me at my word on this.
I have not seen it
without verifying
it later. I
later.
haven't been able to find it.
But I'm telling you that
I haven't seen it. I haven't been able to verify it.
It's confidential internal data at private hospitals. I cannot tell you who or where.
And maybe
but there are people who are there are people I know that are looking at this stuff. You're right. The CDC is still flubbing this hard.
If you lie to me, I don't give a shit. If you make a claim and you have to lie to me to make that claim, I no longer believe any. It doesn't matter what you present to me after that point.
Right. Well, the CDC is totally fucking it in that sense. I'm just telling you that right now, as it stands, like just from July and June, like things are not going well, but a lot of the people that are getting like the short end of the stick right now, and it's not just for vaccine reasons, by the way, but a lot of people that are getting the short end of the stick are unvaccinated. But you got to keep in mind there's other pressures involved that are affecting the data. People who get vaccinated are probably more likely to be people who already had the capacity to avoid the kinds of scenarios where they're going to get an exposure. You have to look at also like who's socioeconomically couched in the position where they're going to get an exposure. That also tends to correlate with those who have not been vaccinated. Think of it like the service industries, etc., are heavily dominated by people who are in certain racial brackets that are not currently high vaccination rates.
I'm pretty sure that the data that's come out of Israel and the data that's come out of Ireland, there are, right? And there's, again, we've talked about this before, getting perfect data is almost impossible, but the data out of Ireland and the data out of Scotland and the data out of Israel, I think those are the three. I know it's Ireland and Israel, are showing 84% of hospitalizations are vaccinated individuals. That's what they're showing.
So that again, so the same kind of issues at play here. So for Israel, it's remarkable that the vaccinated persons, and that also depends on the study, but in all studies, it's surprising that for the saturation of vaccination in their demographic, and also the endogenous immunity largely making the makeup of that, it's surprising that the number of vaccinated persons in those groups are not higher for Israel. Like I'm not saying that it's like perfect, but it is showing vaccines have an efficacy to speak for.
So the efficacy is like 40%. That's what I am here, right?
Yeah, that's around what I saw last, possibly.
That is, and again, like I talked about with Evan here, if you have an efficacy below 50%, I think that's pretty close to saying you didn't do anything. Right?
Well, here's the thing. No, stop right there, because that's present efficacy. That's not historical efficacy. That is present cases happening today. Yes, it is.
You can't turn around and pull out the Pfizer data that said, "Oh, we were all well, good, and everything was fine and fucking dandy."
No. We don't have to care about. We don't have to care about the past. We don't have to care about the past.
You just said historical data, dude.
We don't. No. I said it is the present data today. As in, the new cases coming in today have a high makeup of vaccinated persons in Israel. It's surprising that it isn't a higher amount if the vaccine was not effective at all. But it's losing its efficacy because the variants are developing and they are getting further away from the wild type virus. It is going to get to the point where they're just completely useless.
Except serology testing is showing that the Pfizer vaccine loses effectiveness at about 6% every 2 weeks, right? So it doesn't matter whether it was a variant or the original strain. It falls off incredibly quickly, and they were bullshit when they came out.
You can fix one of those. You can fix one of those, Stephen. You can fix waning efficacy with a booster if it's the same virus and it still works against it. If it's a new virus that will not work against, then giving a booster with the same vaccine is completely fucking useless.
If you have that much waning efficiency or efficacy, I'm sorry, but your vaccine was ineffective, right? Like you shouldn't be requiring people to pump themselves full of a substance on a routine and regular basis. Like if you talk about 5 years, fine.
Really, you mean like insulin for say diabetes?
That's not a fucking vaccine, dude. That's a drug.
No, but you said substance, jackass. You said substance. You went down. Fine. I did not say that it wasn't a vaccine. I said it's not a vaccine.
You want to play the semantic games? Play the semantic games.
You go down that road too, buddy.
You should not be at a point. If we're talking about efficacy, right? If we're talking about efficacy for a fucking vaccine, and you're going to tell me that the solution to the fact that these things fail, unlike every other vaccine
I said any solution is possible for one of the two.
That's not a solution. Continuously pumping people full of vaccine because the vaccines don't work doesn't make the vaccines work. It just means that you temporarily stave off the next injection.
That is characterizing it in a way that avoids talking about the actual mechanism of the problem, and you know it.
Which is decay.
Like I said, there are two cases there. Right, and there are confounding factors involved.
No, that is
Yeah,
the
yeah, there
actual
are.
titers. Your titers are showing a 6% drop every 2 weeks. That
Right,
is what
but
the
you see,
Pfizer
your
data says.
T cells and B cells, so your B cells are not pumping out antibodies for your entire life at that level. They just aren't.
No, they aren't. But you don't get that level of vaccine wane in most other vaccines. You don't get a drop that significant. The 6% drop in your IgG titers matches with the 40% that we're seeing in the data. That I understand you're saying it's Delta and it's all this data that we can't see, and maybe that's all fucking fine and dandy,
Again,
right?
please, for
But
people listening,
but
don't
that
just take that at face
6%,
value. Wait for someone to come back and verify that, because I am still looking for that kind of. Like, I'm looking for public
there
sources
is,
to try and give you that.
I will update if I have that
and I
data,
have
by
not
the by.
found that.
Yeah. So I'm sorry
But
I can't like
if you're
bring that
talking
on
about
here right
6%,
now. I'm just saying it does exist.
if you're talking about 6%, a 6% every 2 weeks drop, that matches with 40% for what we're seeing, right? So the IgG titer drop matches the efficacy drop that we're seeing. And whether you want to say it's due to Delta or whether you want to say it's due to the original COVID, it doesn't fucking matter. It is a drop. And that means that the vaccines
Right.
aren't effective. They aren't vaccines. Sitting there and giving you antibody, like there's no reason why we couldn't do convalescent therapy and convalescent plasma as the exact same solution to the exact same problem.
Well, those don't give you the
No
ability to
fucking
produce
difference.
more vaccine. Sorry, not vaccine. Those don't give you the ability to produce more antibodies. Those only give you the antibodies right there and then.
I mean, it doesn't look like the vaccines give you the ability to produce a whole shitload of antibodies. If you have to keep on giving them, if I have to continuously give you a vaccine every 6 months,
Okay, so tell me,
you're
tell me
not
this:
producing
what
antibodies.
about, how many years, how many months or years would it take before it's a reasonable dosing schedule for you?
I mean, most vaccines. So ignoring the live virus vaccines, which tend to be lifetime, right?
Okay, so let's just go with
Like
the common one everybody knows about, polio. You know those
5 years.
vaccines wear off, right?
Yeah, like after 5 years.
So what's the
You want to
dosing
turn
schedule
around
that
and
you'd be okay with?
probably 5 years at a minimum, and
All
you
right.
really should be at the point where you're at 10 years maximum. Right? Like
So
if you're not doing lifetime, if it's not a lifetime, I would rather see something on the order of 5 to 10 years. So if you're
how
coming in
often
at
do you have
six
to get
months,
your
your vaccine
how,
does not work. It is nothing
how often do
more
you get
than
how often do you get a tetanus shot?
5-ish years. That's what you're supposed
No,
to get.
it's about 10 years.
Okay, whatever.
So
I'm
again,
pretty sure
so
that,
just
hold
if
on,
anything that makes
there's a
your point
gradient.
stronger, buddy. So I'm just saying that there is
No.
we've got
I
to
think
be
that
able,
if
like,
I remember
we can
correctly,
walk away from the extremes in the conversation here. We can walk away from the hyperbole here for a minute to talk about like what would be an acceptable value. And you say 5 to 10 years is a reasonable range. I'm inclined to agree.
I think a better way to phrase it is, in order for us to consider it a vaccine, and in order for us to consider it an effective vaccine,
An effective
it
vaccine.
needs
I
to
think that's
be
we can
it
just say
needs
that.
to be sure an effective vaccine. In
Okay.
order for
Yeah.
it to be an effective vaccine, it must create the ability for your body to have an immunological response on its own without something else. Because right now, these
Now here's
vaccines, or we'll call
something you
them
should
quote
consider
unquote
also.
vaccines here, right? All they seem to do is to pump up your titer levels temporarily, and then over time allow them to be reabsorbed.
Here's an
That's
issue that you
not
need to consider. Steve, here's another issue you need to consider. Your B cell count and thus the coincident or subsequent antibody boost in your serological test results comes with subsequent exposures, and we don't stop
it takes
people from.
no it,
Hold
it's
on, just give me a second
it's
here.
a conversion period. It takes about 10 days for the metabolic process to switch over from whatever they're doing to the memory T and B cells.
My point here is that we are basically, in addition to giving vaccine, we've largely
It's not
gone to the
vaccines.
point where pause. We've largely gone to the point. We've largely gotten to the point where we have so limited subsequent exposure without infection production without infection converging to disease, that the normal endogenous boost that is given by subsequent exposures to a vaccination are not happening. And that's a double-edged sword. It's good that people aren't going to be exposed to the point where they might get sick, but it's also bad that people are not developing additional immunity by this kind of secondary exposure. This happens all the time with other viruses.
Very presumptuous.
It's the reason why other viruses continue to present reasonable titers over years. And I'm not saying that it's exactly the reason in this case. It's a contributing factor. Can we at least agree that it's a contributing factor? Minor.
I would be willing to do that, but I don't think that we are in sufficient levels of
we don't have a way to test for it right now, sure.
No, we don't. And we don't know the efficacy of these controls, but everything is indicating that lockdowns don't do a whole hell of a lot and masks don't do a whole hell of a lot. Yeah, but that also,
right? So here's the thing, is that partly is due to the fact that people get pissed off at them, which I agree they should be pissed off at them, and they just disobey them and get sick anyway.
It doesn't matter. To your point of do we have something that is conflating this data, the answer is, yeah, we might have a potential bias in our effect, but realistically, the things that might be biasing our data don't have a significant impact on that data, right? That's the reality that we're dealing with. So we're probably more or less dealing with the fact that the titers just decay, right? Your body just reabsorbs it, and you're not actually gaining any form of immunity to
it. So here, again, you might... exposure or not. So here, let me put it like this. If you don't have the antibodies at high levels, if they're above a certain point which has yet to be established, period, because we don't have enough time or data to establish it yet, like we do with other diseases and viruses, above a certain minimum threshold, a titer can be any value, and you'd still have immunity. Like you don't have to have 100 times the baseline immunity for you to be perfectly immune to a virus. You just have to have the baseline. Like if that's the idea there, is there's got to be some minimum amount. But we have not established what that minimum amount is. And that's the important thing that's involved here. Okay, just make that clear. That's all.
But it doesn't fucking matter, dude. It doesn't matter. Because at the end of the day, they came out and they said these were 96% effective against this thing, and they aren't.
They are against the wild type.
96% effective in the first 2 weeks.
Wild type.
But they are... No, we don't... That is not what the IgG results are showing. The IgG results are showing a 6% decay,
there's a yet to be established point at which, yes, if it decays below that, it's not effective. But we don't know what that threshold is yet.
So let me get this straight. The position
I'm saying we don't have enough data yet.
You don't have a basis. You're defending a position that you don't have a basis, you don't have a numerical value, that you have no scaling factor, and everything else shows a decay rate that is consistent with no changes, and the vaccine's just an effect, right? We don't have any data that supports the vaccine is effective 6 months out. We have no data that says that there isn't legitimately, even against the original strain, a 6% decay rate because of all of the confounding variables that you've already mentioned. So as far as I can see, we have titers that are decaying.
So what I'm trying to do here is nail down specifics. I'm trying to nail down specifics so that the generalizations that come about from them don't obscure the mechanisms that are at play here. Things change over time. Yes.
Right, and those things happen to be efficacy, which was false.
But my point here is that the assertions of the general state of affairs miss some of the details, and when you miss those details, you can come to wrong conclusions.
I don't think it changes the outcome.
You can come to unsupported conclusions because the data is an aggregate in such a way that you cannot divide out the conclusion you want.
So hold on. This is not how we do science, right? We don't come in and say that we assert a positive claim. We assume no effect, a null hypothesis until proven otherwise. And right now, we have a null hypothesis.
And what you're doing is you're asserting you have asserted at the outset here. You have asserted a causal reason for that.
No, I'm saying
Yes,
the
you
evidence
have.
is indicating that they are ineffective. Vaccines being
Right,
ineffective
against
is the
what?
null hypothesis.
Against
Against
what, though?
the fucking pandemic. Anything.
Yeah,
Doesn't fucking matter.
okay, against the pandemic. What's the pandemic?
The coronavirus
Is it
pandemic.
a virus or is it
Don't go
viruses?
semantics.
No. This
Don't
is
go
specifics.
semantics.
This is specifics.
It
You've
doesn't.
gone
No,
semantics
it's
here.
not.
It is
It's not. At
specifics.
the end of the
Absolutely
day,
is.
At the end of the day, we did not have the data to say that these things induce long-term immunity. We didn't have that last year. We don't
Correct.
have it now, and everything is pointing out that that was false. The claim that they made
But we
associated
don't know what
with
the basis is for that.
was a
We don't know what the
false
basis is for
claim.
long-term immunity. We cannot make that statement until we know what the basis for long-term immunity is. And the only way we get that is if we
can't
wait.
make the statement that they're effective until we know what the basis for long-term immunity is.
We
So it doesn't
can't make
matter
a
how
statement
you trial
for
data.
the level of their efficacy. Let's be honest here. They are effective
we can make,
immediately against the original strain, but beyond that,
right, but that's not
and
96,
given time,
that is not 96% effective.
well, 96% effective,
That's not
within that initial 1 week frame.
Their
But
claim of efficacy, yeah, but if you have a 2 week frame,
It's not a
and that's
1
the
week
entire
frame though.
period-
No, it's not. It's not even just a 2 week frame. That has look. They had to submit data to get for their BLA. Like there's
Right.
more to
And
it than that. Now.
apparently, that doesn't include longitudinal efficacy. I mean, I don't understand how you can be defending this, because the null hypothesis is no effect. That is the assumption
Right.
that we have on any drug or any medical
because,
treatment.
And again,
First
my
time
point here is that
Pfizer
you have to be
takes a
specific
shit on a
about against
toilet.
what. You're saying
Okay.
pandemic to get around the fact that there are multiple variants,
No.
there's multiple viruses
I'm not.
involved here.
I'm not.
You
I'm
absolutely
not
fucking
trying
are.
to get around anything. No, I'm not. They didn't have the data to say it was 96% effective. I am arguing the null hypothesis. The null hypothesis is just
In a given
because
time
a
frame.
Pfizer executive took a shit on a fucking toilet doesn't mean they have a viable drug. Right? That is the null hypothesis, that they don't have a basis for anything. And what it turns out is it looks like, at scale, when they actually have longitudinal data, which they didn't have last year, it turns out it doesn't appear to be effective. Now, you can make the argument.
Though? That's the thing.
You can make it doesn't matter. It
But
doesn't
no,
matter.
come
COVID
on.
strain. No, if you have,
It's
if your
not
titers
effective
are
against
dropping,
hepatitis, therefore it's
if
no
your
longer
titers-
useful.
No. If your titers are dropping and your overall efficacy
to
is
what
dropping
level?
at the same rate, we can easily infer that it didn't have.
You're arguing causation for correlation here.
No, I'm not. I'm arguing
you
that you have
are.
2 points of data showing that it's not
Lightning
effective,
strikes and
we have
shark
0
attacks
points
are
of data showing
correlated.
that it is effective. I'm arguing that we don't have the data saying it was effective, and they rolled this out anyways. That's what I'm arguing. I'm arguing that the null hypothesis.
That's the nature
Pfizer
of an
took a
emergency
shit
use
in-
authorization. That was the whole point of that in the
Bull
first
fucking
place.
shit. Bull fucking shit. They came out. They said it was 96% effective. They made a claim.
Yeah,
they
within
didn't
the
have the
data that they submitted,
That
it
is
absolutely
the
was.
It's
We
a
went
bald-faced
through that
bullshit.
authorization. We went through that authorization,
Oh yeah.
and we went through it. We saw the data.
And,
It was
and
within the
no,
time
no, no.
frame they
No, I
did.
was very, very clear at the time that we did that they do not
Yeah.
have the time period that they need to do to claim long-term efficacy.
Oh,
I was
that's fair.
Sure.
explicit
And
that they
I
didn't have that.
I don't
data.
think we had an argument at that point. I think that's right. I think we
Now
had
you're
the same-
arguing
the
with me
same.
over it.
No, I'm saying we
They
still had
made
to
a
wait
claim.
and see.
They didn't have data to back it. No, they made a claim. They don't have data to back it.
They did
The
not
drug
say
should
it
be
was
full.
definitely going to have long-term immunity. They had the
They
data
should
to
pull-
show
they
from the
should pull
beginning of the
emergency
studies.
use auth- They should pull the emergency use authorization because they haven't proven long-term efficacy.
But again,
That's
you
what
have
they
to,
should be
look,
doing.
so how long do we need to wait?
As long as it
For-
takes to demonstrate that it actually produces a real
You have
immunological
given no
response.
criteria. How long do we need to
rather than
wait?
just short-
What criteria is
10
required
years.
here?
Boom. 10
years?
years. How about that?
So we need to wait 10 years from, say, today. Say, because
How about-
there's several vaccines
Yep.
also coming out. So 10 years from now.
Sure.
Will the virus still be
I
around then?
mean, you pick a time. It certainly could
Okay,
with
so what
6
about
months.
hold on. So what about the flu vaccine for this year, which was developed from the variants from last year? How long do we need to wait for them to be proven effective before we can use them?
I would make an argument that there's a fundamental difference in a technology that's been consistently employed for decades than a technology that has not been employed ever.
Let's not even go down the Pfizer Moderna road. What about the? Let's not even go down the mRNA road. Skip that. Let's just talk about the J&J vaccine.
Just going to ignore
How about that one?
Okay, that one's an adenovirus, and this is still the first time that that's been used like this.
Well, against the coronavirus?
That is still a brand new technology. No, I mean, we haven't really used... We have not used a short-run adenovirus vaccine historically. This is the first major rollout of an adenovirus vaccine. We have done tests, we've done experiments, we've built some of the research up into this thing, but we haven't actually deployed it before. So bull fucking shit. If you have a brand new technology, then you need to demonstrate efficacy before you can deploy it. I don't fucking give a shit what pandemic's coming down. You can have space aids, and I don't give a fucking shit. You do not get to do that until you can prove it.
Someone shows up with space aids, I think we should just... If someone shows up with space aids, we need to send them back over there. The atmospheric border. Get the fuck off the planet.
Yeah, I don't think Pete Buttigieg is going to let us do that, though.
If he's the one that comes down with space aids, he can argue from space. Send his ass up to Mir.
Like, the consistent thing that we know about pharmaceutical companies, they have the highest failure rate in the scientific replication realm.
That's
consistently across the board.
Oh, no. You're excluding several different disciplines here, my friend.
No, pharmaceuticals is 90%. Psychology is estimated at 80%, but they've only ever proven 66%.
And sociology?
There's a lot of other ones.
That's like 100%.
Sociology is... No, it's actually in the same, like, 66%.
Wow.
It's estimated that it's higher than that based on...
How about sociology since... How about sociology since, like, 1980?
I think that if you narrow the time frame, you probably get higher.
I am really cherry picking here, but like let's go down that road.
The point is that they didn't have the data. They shouldn't have presented it like they did. It was fucking bullshit. And now Biden is not going to get anybody to take that fucking thing. And everybody's right.
Like I said, you can see it in his face.
Authorization. Yeah, and they should pull the emergency use authorization.
Well, like I said, it's like I said, for what it was designed and deployed, for what it was designed, approved, and deployed for, it was effective.
Bull fucking shit.
But that is a limited. That is a limited set of information, a limited scenario.
Sure. It is designed to save you for 2 weeks before it drops below 90% efficacy. Fucking amazing vaccine right there. No, fuck that shit.
Remember, it's an efficacy against what? And again, against the wild type virus. That's the original, which is not present today anymore because it's been selected out. It was very effective against that. It's the wild type is hardly a blip on the radar right now.
I'm gonna throw this out there that you can make the argument that the wild type is no longer in the environment. And I understand the argument that you're making there. However, we have no proof of longitudinal effectiveness of these vaccines against the wild type virus. And the only data that we have shows that it drops efficacy in its titers by 6% every 2 weeks, which matches the overall
here's the thing.
Decrease in efficacy.
You say efficacy and titer, but no titer is going to remain that far above whatever background level exists without further exposures. So if it is normal for the titers to decrease to some level. We just don't know what level it's going to decrease to, because that's in the future. And we also don't know what level is going to be effective.
Most of the other vaccines that we have historically developed transfer a long-term form of immunity, one way or the other.
Right, as a baseline level of for a titer. They still have a massive bump at the beginning. You've got I'm expecting a decline in IgG. We just don't know where it's going to decline to. It could be to 0. We don't know where it's going to go to. We don't know how much is needed to be immune.
We are not seeing the memory and the B and the T cell recognition right now. That's what we're not seeing.
We aren't seeing people being done.
Natural immunity.
Here's the thing. That's not being studied at a large scale right now. That's just not being studied.
Got it. So
because people are not going to go in for a biopsy of a lymph node just to find out if they got the B cells.
So what we have, right, for this emergency use authorization thing, we have no long-term efficacy data on the wild-type virus. We have no long-term, or we have long-term efficacy data, or we have short-term efficacy data showing it's crap in the current situation.
Against,
we have
Delta.
Whatever. Don't care. At the end of the day, the thing gets deployed. It doesn't do shit. Right? So you want to say that it was great against the wild-type virus with no data backing you? No data backing you. It could have done
better. And look, with data we have to date, it could have done better had more people gotten the vaccine earlier. Potentially.
Maybe.
Big,
but the Delta already
potentially
existed.
There, you know.
The Delta was circulating last year.
At the end of the year.
We did
at
talk
the very
about
end of the year. Now, here's the thing. It would have been less of a problem. It had fewer people had the exposure that they had.
The vaccines were deployed after the Delta variant was in circulation. The vaccines were deployed, so your argument is completely bunk on face, right?
No, it's
at
really
the end
not.
of the day. You want to argue that there's this one theoretical use case that we never saw and wasn't actually deployed in the environment.
You could have at least excluded people from hotspots had we known where they were.
But they didn't do that, did they?
Right.
They didn't do that. So we don't have any data saying it actually works. That's the bottom line. And nobody turned around and said, we don't have this data, go fucking do your study again. This is replication failure in action. They should have done proper studies.
It's not the same condition. No, it's not replication. It's different.
And if it fucking fails, I don't care how many people die. You don't push it out without evidence.
It's different circumstance. It's totally different, though. This is not replication. This is totally different.
How?
It's a completely fucking different virus, man.
No. You still don't have long-term efficacy in the wild-type virus. Right, the vaccines weren't out in time to have to test for efficacy in the wild type virus, according to your presentation of the events. Right, at the end of the day, you have no data backing your position that they did anything at all, and there is ample data showing that they're doing nothing at all right now. So, time to end it. Pull the emergency use authorization. Tell them to go back to the drawing board and get their fucking data, and then they can come back and talk to people about it.
You see, you're asking, again, it's not that it's without merit to a degree here, but you're applying certain standards which, with the way you're being requested to be applied, become impossible standards.
Not really.
They just do. They just become impossible.
No.
If the virus has a certain mutation, so with the circulation volume present, if eventually you get the data you want, the virus will have had so much opportunity to mutate that the vaccine will be completely fucking pointless. You're basically asking you to never use a vaccine.
So, no.
Yes, it is. That's absolutely what it becomes. If you need 10 years of data...
I'm saying if... No. Hold on. We're already at the point where after a year, the vaccine's fucking useless, right? We fucking ramrodded this shit in.
See, we didn't hit herd immunity, so we didn't limit circulation volume, so mutations happen, and then they bypass the fucking vaccine because of natural selection pressures. Of course they're going to become useless if you don't hit herd immunity.
Right. So lockdown.
How do we avoid herd immunity? Well, we just pissed off everyone, or we got a whole bunch of people to start believing bullshit because they didn't have anybody authoritative to go to with good data.
All of that is a fair point. But at the end of the day, if your vaccine can't come out quick enough with enough safety and efficacy data in order to make an impact on the pandemic, then there's no point in pursuing that technology.
Here's the thing: is we got to the point where we're starting to see impacts made, and unfortunately, because the circulation volume was so high, because the circulation volume of virus is so high, there's so many opportunities to mutate that they completely fucked herd immunity in the first place with this vaccine. I think they need a new one. It's just
I think that then
while Delta is dominant, while Delta is dominant, if they don't have a vaccine against just
Tell you what.
if they don't have one that covers the current variants today by this fall, like the major variants, then it's not going to be enough. We're not going to be able to hit herd immunity.
And I'm gonna go back to the whole entire thing there, because guess what? By the time they get those vaccines deployed, the virus will have mutated again around the vaccines, which makes the vaccines completely pointless.
No.
That's the point.
So, but that's a reversal.
You cannot get. You
Damn it,
cannot
Stephen,
get
that was a
the data
reversal.
You need to make the claim. No,
that's a cause and effect reversal.
Get the data.
You can't. No, look. You can't say that the virus will have mutated specifically to avoid the vaccine prior to it being deployed.
I'm not saying that it mutated.
I don't know if I hope you didn't mean it. That's how it came out.
No. So first off, the Delta variant occurred before the vaccine came out, and the vaccine's ineffective on the Delta variant, right? The bottom line is the viruses are perpetually mutating. And they mutate at a faster rate than we can get a vaccine.
So the point was to get. So if you get a vaccine, so let's just skip to the end.
It's not a possible.
Skip to the end of that.
The whole program.
But we've done it with other viruses. Period.
No, we haven't.
When was the last time you? Hold on. When was the last time you heard about a widespread outbreak of yellow fever in the United States?
So first off, that's not done in this short of a time frame, right?
Uh-huh.
We absolutely have developed vaccines to viruses in the past, but they also go through long-term safety and efficacy trials, which we didn't do in this.
You realize the reason they don't give yellow fever vaccine to everybody today right now is because A, we got rid of the thing in the country, and B, the vaccine is really not that pleasant.
Right, and guess what? We got rid of it years ago, and it wasn't chasing variants like we are today. At the end of the day,
they still were chasing variants. They were. It's, we didn't have the fucking dumbass WHO nomenclature for it, but they absolutely were. We didn't have the ability of everybody who has their thumb up their ass to get onto Twitter and give an opinion on it either. Well, I'm not saying that there's any kind of causative effect here, but they certainly didn't have people on a podcast either. Like, they just had people on news broadcasts.
I believe yellow fever was done with, like, if I remember correctly, it was done. It's the same thing as smallpox. It was done with a vaccine a long time ago. They had it out for like 20 years before they started mandating people take it. And yeah, we wiped it out because we had a general vaccine that worked against the general variants.
The mandate, by the way, to be specific here, the mandate was at the border, not within the country necessarily. It was certainly used for travel across borders. And that's the only place where that kind of mandate makes sense. It's the only place where it's really an ethical thing to ask. But that's been used to great effect for about a century.
And I'm okay with doing it if you're traveling to other countries, right? Like, I'm perfectly okay with you having a vaccine.
That's the real vaccine passport, by the way. The real vaccine passport is the ICVP.
The question is whether or not what we have chosen to do in this last year actually accomplished anything. The answer is no. And if it doesn't
certainly made a lot of politicians feel good about themselves.
I'm sure it did, but it didn't actually accomplish anything.
And a lot of blowhards on Twitter.
Yep, but I understand.
I think it's made this show like a grand total of $5.
Oh, we're up to 6 actually.
Yeah.
Fat bucks.
Where's my money, bitch? Where's my money?
Hey, man! At the end of the day, $2 a pop. We can go make 2 visits to a dollar theater.
Hey, $2.02 a pop. I'll have you know.
Oh shit!
Yeah, big money, big money.
Day, if it didn't actually accomplish anything, we shouldn't be sitting there and chasing it. We shouldn't be ramming it down everybody's throat. It should be completely voluntary, and we need to be honest about the data. And we weren't doing any. I
think the voluntary part of it is not even a question. I think, like, eventually it's probably going to be a school vaccine. Eventually, this will probably be a school vaccine, just like most other vaccines in society, and that's fine. Well,
I am
pro-vaccine
on anything that has long-term safety and efficacy data. This didn't have long-term safety and efficacy data. Your argument entirely requires a series of assumptions to be made about what was going to happen when the vaccines rolled out. It doesn't actually work in practice, and at the end of the day, that's too fucking bad. They didn't have their long-term safety and efficacy data, which was what I pointed out in the fall. I said it was fucking bullshit then. It was bullshit then. It's bullshit now. They need to pull the emergency use authorization and say, sorry, we fucked up, and move on with it.
That's not going to happen, just out of a practical measure of things.
I know it's not going to happen because we have a fucking, dimwit as president.
No, it has nothing to do with the president. It has something to do with the FDA.
Oh, absolutely it does.
FDA is not going to...
The Democrats bank so heavily on vaccines. The Democrats bank so heavily on vaccines, absolutely it's never going to happen for political reasons. The best we can hope for is that they don't do any actual vaccines mandates because it doesn't work. That's the best we can hope for.
Well, we should really be hoping for right now is that they get a booster that has variant coverage out to the public, and that they don't fuck up and confuse that and the old vaccine when they start talking about boosters this fall. Because that's an argument I see coming. That's a fuck up I see coming where everyone's going to get vaccinated against basically the wrong virus, and then it's not going to do anything, and they're going to get upset, and it's going to compound issues. Like I said,
Pfizer just wants to sell more of the same shot. There's no fucking difference between the boosters that's been proposed and the ones that they take previously.
The reason why I phrased it the way I did is that they called it boosters just now, but the boosters from before were the ones that have a new virus included in them, a new vaccine, not the old vaccine.
So yeah, we're into all kinds of new verbiage these days.
They've already confused the issue by saying boosters today without saying a third dose of the old vaccine, which is, again, probably going to only boost immunity again in certain populations for certain things. Like it's just not going to be effective for the general population, in my estimation.
At best, it will dump a whole bunch of shit into your IgG levels, and then in a few weeks, you'll be right back to where you were, and nothing will have changed.
But again, we don't know if where you were matters, because we just don't know if where you were in this context matters, because we don't know what the level of IgG in your body is required in order to get to effective immunity.
And if we don't know that, if we can't say and prove that this stuff works, then we can't know that. If you can't know it, then you can't prescribe it.
It's an a priori requirement.
This is informed consent. If you can't prove that it works, then it doesn't work.
Well, again, we have short-term info. We need longer-term info to get long-term info. Like it's you can't chicken and egg that.
Absolutely, you can. It's called phase 1, 2, and 3 trials. We do it all the time. It takes typically 20 years to get actual design and development. And yes, that means we wouldn't have a vaccine out for the pandemic. And oh fucking boo-hoo. But when we did actually produce something, and we did actually deal with the realities of herd immunity, and that we should just be exposing people and rendering aid or treatment,
it is so unethical on so many levels.
If you can't prove to me that vaccine works, which is right now the stance that you're taking, your argument is that they think it might have worked against the wild strain.
Again,
but you have no proof.
You have to look at the time scale that you're asking, and the time scale that was proven are different. I'm just putting that out there.
Not really.
There are certain time scales that are involved.
If you're going to come
but you
to
see,
me
again,
and say
if you ask for 10-year immunity,
and you're going to say I don't know the levels which are effective, then you can't come to me and say that it's effective, right? If you don't know that,
we know that we don't have. Look, what we know is we don't have a floor for where it's effective. We know that there are lots of values that are effective. We don't know how low it can go before it's not.
And if you don't know that, then you can't prove that it is effective.
Well, we can prove that within a certain time frame it is. Within a certain time frame, you can prove against a certain virus.
Sure.
You can prove it.
For 2 weeks. For 2 weeks, it has some.
But we have more data than that now, obviously. 6 months is basically what we know so far.
And that data shows a 6% decay over time.
But we don't know how much that matters. We don't know how much that matters yet. We know that with that 6% decay, it's still effective against the original virus.
What we can say is that after 6 months, it's no longer effective. Be it due to variants,
against
or
other viruses.
Be it due to variants, or be it due to IgG titers. We don't know why it's not effective. We just know that it's not effective after 6 weeks. That's what we can say.
Fine.
We can say
look,
that the vaccine
we can come down to
is
that one.
no longer effective after 6 months, and that means that it doesn't have efficacy data.
For this specific
That's what it means.
circumstances, we can absolutely say basically that. Sure.
And why do you think that if we're vaccinated, as we are, and the virus is going to circulate within the population, why do you think that that's going to get better? Why do you think that the virus will evolve to be more less vaccine resistant?
I don't assert that at all.
By which, so then we have no reason and no basis to believe that it's effective in any way, shape, or form. We have no basis for that.
So again, at present, and again, there are confounding variables at play here, so I can't say that this is the reason why.
Bullshit. It is either effective or it isn't.
No, there is absolutely a gray area there, buddy.
No, there isn't.
No, okay. What percent? What efficacy percent? What is the efficacy percent at which? Okay. Hold on. Efficacy and which regime of efficacy would you have to pick? So, symptomatic infection, hospitalization, or death. Which one of those three would you want to go with? It doesn't matter which one. And then, at what percentage of efficacy would you say, all right, the binary switch has flipped? It is now effective.
It's got to be over 95%, preferably 97 to 99. So I would say 90. It would have to be 99+% in terms of hospitalizations or deaths. It would have to be 95% in terms of overall infections, right? And it would have to hold that
95% effective, symptomatic, 99% plus for hospitalization and death.
Efficacy. It would have to hold that efficacy for 5 to 10 years. That is an effective vaccine. This is bullshit that they keep on injecting people with to try to chase a problem and make politicians feel better. That's what this is. This isn't a vaccine.
I feel like we need some kind of kazoo music to come in.
What's going on?
So I feel like we need to just have like the Monty Python intermission there.
Play the chicken dance song.
There you go.
Oh, did I cut out for a little while? Like
No. Well, I hope not. I mean, you seemed like you ended it on the note you wanted to end it.
That is.
I wasn't going to. I'm not pressing the issue. I'm not going to press the issue any further because this is becoming where we just butt heads the way we normally do, and it's fine.
Yeah, probably.
And people who are listening, I hope they managed to note the issues where we may have sounded like we were arguing like we hate each other, but there are certain issues there that are key where you heard us agree.
Yep.
And they're important because they matter. Like, this is why I asked what standard you want to use to judge things, because if we're going to go by your standard versus my standard or whatever, we need to establish these bases.
Sure.
And again, in terms of opinion, that's fine.
Different perspectives, right?
Yeah,
this comes down to my risk.
Remember, he said a vaccine needs to last 5 to 10 years. I'm inclined to agree to this. I think that's a demonstrable, reasonable standard. I don't think that's saying like that's a reason to stop calling a vaccine necessarily. But I think if you want to apply the label effective, if you want to apply the label effective vaccine, I think that's a reasonable stance to take. And it's not gene therapy. Get the fuck out of here with that.
Oh, it's gene therapy. You insert mRNA into the cells. The cells produce a protein. That is gene therapy.
Gene therapy is where you affect the genes, not where you just put stuff in that makes some proteins.
Now, that said, it could be gene therapy, but it doesn't seem to be.
You're implying CRISPR-Cas9 level shit, man, and that's just not the case.
No, I'm sorry. I think at the end of the day, they should have been evaluated as gene therapy. As soon as you're inserting...
Look, so there's no this is what they've inserted is past the step of reverse transcriptase production of mRNA. So you don't need the complement. You don't use the complement
you have
mRNA.
when you have your cells producing a protein, right, which is not a
Right.
natural response because you've injected them with shit. We should consider it and treat it like gene therapy, and it should have been
Okay, how about
evaluated
any live
accordingly.
viral vector, any live
by the
viral vector
way,
vaccine that's ever been used?
I mean, if we were using live viral vectors, I would have taken it.
Oh, we do that. If we use a weakened virus, that is a live viral vector.
Yeah, absolutely.
That is gene therapy, then, in your estimation here, is it not?
No, it's not.
Because you're inserting genes into the cells. You're inserting genes into cells, and they are producing more virus. That's proteins. That's DNA, or RNA.
Yes.
That's
yes, it is. However,
right. That's producing. Like, okay, come on, we've got to establish a consistent basis here.
You're playing.
That's not a semantics game, right? And you know it. That is look.
No, that's absolutely a semantics game.
Fair to say, I turn around and fair to say that the mRNA is a different regime here.
Right.
It's fair. I'm just saying that it's got to be. You got to be specific on this. Otherwise, you're implying certain other technologies in play that just are not at play.
Like, when we do live attenuated virus vaccines,
right,
which are extremely effective, generally produce pretty close to lifetime immunity from them. Lots of really good stuff in live attenuated virus vaccines. But when we do that, yes, you're correct. They are injecting mRNA into the cells, but it is the virus doing it as part of a simulated infection that your immune system is supposed to respond to.
Yeah, well, this is also supposed to be a simulated infection with less of the virus.
We, in this case, are telling ourselves to make a completely different protein. This is not part of a viral infection. This is not something that the immune system, we know how the immune system is going to entirely react to, which is demonstrated by the argument that we just had. It should have been treated like a gene therapy. We should have sat there and done the FDA authorization as a gene therapy. And by the way, if we did that, a lot of my concerns and questions would have been answered.
Here's where we have to get to a point where we agree on something here, because I think we can. The way you phrased it, treated like a gene therapy, fine. I think that if we're going to start calling it something like that, we can come up with some new categorization for it, because it is not in the same line as what we would normally call gene therapy.
Yeah, it's not really a gene therapy, but it's certainly not a vaccine either. So
we should not confuse it with gene therapy, because they are vastly different technologies.
But I want to actually chime in here on that.
Carving a special box and saying treat it like a gene therapy.
But I do want to come in, and I'd like to make my own personal comment on this, because it is a technical possibility, however unfeasible. There is the possibility that there could be inserts in one of these mRNA vaccines. However likely,
if you want to make that argument,
I'm not saying that there have been. I'm just saying that the possibility exists based on the technology and the way that it functions.
And I don't want this to sound discompassionate, because this should give the same level of credence here. There could be, and it comes down to a certain level of trust, and the reason why I say it shouldn't sound discompassionate is because the authoritative institutions have absolutely expended their trust. This is like saying that there could be something in the Advil you take for a headache that gives you another headache. But in this case, imagine if they lied. But imagine if they lied about what the fuck they were putting in Advil for, say, the entire headache pandemic. Like,
I think
it could be the reason why women have PMS and hate men.
I think using your live virus vaccine example is the best case. In the case of using a live virus vaccine, the live virus goes into a cell, it infects the cell, and then it obliterates the cell.
Yeah, it does what vaccines do. Or not vaccines, it does what viri do.
There are no expected permanent changes associated with that. It essentially treats your immune system as if it's responding to a simulated. It basically pulls a drill for your immune system. In this case, it directly injects the mRNA. Your cells remain intact.
No, here's the thing: it's viral. It's viral. So if it's a retrovirus, it's viral complement RNA, which is reverse transcriptase transcribed into mRNA to produce the virus again. If it's a DNA-based virus, then it is just outright transcribed into mRNA, which is what produces the virus again. So there's different mechanisms at play, obviously, but it's not mRNA inside a virus.
At the end of the day, when we use live attenuated viruses, the cells destruct after they're used to produce proteins, right?
Yes.
That's the reality, right? So the damage associated with a live virus vaccine is limited.
It also produces more virus.
Because the live virus. Yes, it does, and that's intentional.
Well, necessarily.
Right?
It's just point of clarification again.
Right. It kills the cell that's doing the machine work, so there are no potential permanent changes or risk associated with that vaccine.
Here's a point to be made with this as well. This is why I would say that an mRNA virus is mRNA vaccine is not as effective as a live viral vaccine. More virus is produced, which stimulates a stronger response from the immune system.
And it's very likely
with an mRNA-based vaccine, only part of the virus is produced. The cell remains alive, which is fine, but the mRNA never gets replicated. It just degrades over time, and after 2 weeks or so, there isn't a single strand of it left in your body.
I understand what you're saying, but because the cell is not destroyed as part of the process, we cannot ensure that there are no additional risks, such as cancer, later on down the line.
Sure.
That's fair.
There could absolutely be an impact.
Well, I'd also say this, that
once be an impact where it does something that we're not expecting it to, because it doesn't kill the cell it uses to produce itself.
So I would say this: not every single cell that produces virus for a vaccine, like even during a live infection, in general, not every cell is going to even go through apoptosis, let alone be obliterated or later endocytosed and reprocessed. The vast majority are. So
the vast majority are.
In terms of the relative risk, I would say you're right that something like a cancer or whatever is higher for the vaccine than it is for live virus.
Mm-hmm.
We can absolutely agree on that. I'm just saying that in terms of, like, if we're talking about relative risk, blows it out of the water. Largely because of the unknowns. We just don't know. So we have to just consider that there is that inherent risk to taking a vaccine, is you're going to get that exposure. It's part of life. It's what happens when you get a cold, you know?
And I'm okay with that. I'm okay with taking a virus.
You know, there could be viral inclusions that come out of it. That, you know, so for giving the mRNA to somebody, it's very possible that the genome in that one cell might be affected in such a way that you have that viral inclusion. Because that's happened throughout human history. Is typically with more with DNA viruses than with retroviruses, but
that's true,
possible.
but it's also extremely limited. Like it's
very unlikely.
Right. It is.
You know, of course, with humans, the ACE2 is more in the testicles, so it's also possible.
It is.
If you give a live viral vaccine, like say the Janssen vax, it's also possible that you have those viral inclusions in your children.
And that's another perfect example of long-term safety concerns that aren't adjudicated in the current data set.
Well, they aren't adjudicated basically in any data set because they just aren't looked at. It's just kind of accepted as not being likely enough to matter.
That's kind of the point, though, right? Like,
not entirely confidence-inducing.
But that's all. Well, here's the thing: is it happens with every viral infection anyway that has any kind of chance of getting onto an ACE2 receptor. So there's not like a way you can just cut that out of your possibilities.
Again, though, right?
Unless you just don't have children.
The virus eliminates its own threat. Your macrophages eliminate the cells that are harboring virus. You get a full-blown immune response. Yes, there's a possibility that you produce, COVID child, the second coming of Jesus, or whatever.
Can you imagine the fucking tabloid pictures? Like, you already know about, like, the vampire, like the bat child, which is the vampire thing. Like, could you imagine the picture? Like, you just have the front of the Inquirer, COVID child. It's the same fucking, like, Dracula-esque picture of a kid.
Oh, they just recycle bat pictures anyway.
But at the same time, the virus will largely get obliterated, and that's kind of the thing. Like, when it comes to the mRNA vaccines, we have no guarantee of that.
So Steve, I appreciate you indulging me rehashing this, and I also was happy to do the same for you. But you and I both have a problem where we've now stayed up another hour.
You also both have jobs, so
we've both.
You got a job? What do you do?
It's called student. So let's go ahead and wrap up now before we take up too much more time.
Student is a hobby.
Uh,
Fair enough. I have a good hobby then. All right.
It is.
So we should probably wrap up so we don't get stuck here another hour-long loop.
that's
Much
entirely.
appreciated as it was to go through.
That's fair. That's fair.
Well, I think that it was a really good, solid discussion. I think it's something, again, going back to the whole entire, like, these are discussions that we should have been having openly as a country.
Yeah, these are discussions that no one was basically having. Like, this discussion is basically verboten, even today, still, kind of.
I'm surprised that we've lasted on YouTube this long with the way that that bitch is running it. So
we haven't even gotten a COVID warning. I'm legit surprised.
Jesus Christ. That's awesome.
I mean, I know how to fly under the radar, but I'm kind of legitimately surprised at how well I've been pulling this off.
I'm impressed. Oh man.
It's either that or we just, haven't actually accounted enough views to matter.
I'm okay with that too.
Yeah, we'll get there eventually. I mean, we're talking about interesting stuff.
I think at the end of the day that as much as we went back and forth, and we will go back and forth on this, because I have a different risk tolerance position than Craig does, and we also have a difference in terms of pragmatism. Right, he comes in it from a very academic perspective, and I think that's very valuable. And all of these things are things that should have been discussed and openly discussed and presented to the public as points and counterpoints associated with doing all of this shit.
Yeah, and it's disturbing that we haven't gotten to this point already. Like, where we're just like the fact that you say that. Like, I bet you if we put these videos up on Facebook or whatever, they'd just get taken down.
Oh, entirely possible. Likely.
It's just like it's disturbing. The way that they're going about this shit, it's so stupid.
It is because as much as I am a vaccine skeptic, and this is one thing I will offer to those conservative listeners who hear this, be very careful when you decide to talk about it, because 9 times out of 10 the conservatives come across as insane, and this is a very frustrating component as somebody who's actually read all the papers and has I've articulated my concerns associated with long-term cancer risk. I've articulated my concerns with long-term fertility, ADE, and a variety of other things, which are all possibilities, right? And highlighted at the same time what I consider my actual personal risk associated from the virus to be in previous episodes, 1 in 15,000, thereabouts. Those kinds of postures are important discussions, and just ignoring it and saying, go down to the local Piggly Wiggly and take a fucking shot is a retarded position for anybody to do. Talk to your doctor.
Shut up and do as I say thing is dumb.
Right. If they turn around and they if we had the conservatives making coherent arguments, maybe we'd actually have a little bit more rational discussion. But right now the liberals are just running roughshod.
I think the idea. So I think that's something that needs to basically punctuate sentences when a conservative is talking about vaccination. Is go talk to your fucking doctor. Don't let these dipshits tell you what to do on TV or whatever. Talk to your doctor.
Mm-hmm.
The doctor's probably going to tell you to get vaccinated or whatever. But at the same time, like, when a conservative stands up there and says, look, no mandates, they should say, but go talk to your doctor. Come on.
You know what? I want to comment on that specifically really quick because it's come up just in the last few days. There's a big talking point about how people on the right are injuring public health by making these making mask mandates illegal. And the thing about it is, what they're doing is they're just giving people back the choice. They're not saying you can't wear a fucking mask. They're saying your child needs to make the choice on their own.
Or no, not the child, the parent. The child is stupid.
Yeah. Sorry, my bad. But yes,
the point appreciated. But yeah, you're right and all. But like the parent.
Yeah, absolutely.
At the end of the day, the curiosity of a free society is that the far left can live in a conservative society and operate their little hippie commune and whatever other bullshit that they want. But a conservative can't live in a liberal society.
Yeah,
it's the irony of liberty.
Well, at least a leftist society.
Yeah, that's true. We've made this distinction before, and it is one that again does merit making. A leftist
It does.
is irredeemable at this point. I mean, the left is gone. There's no value
You
to it
would
anymore.
call this conversation very liberal about 20 years ago.
Oh,
Just to be
oh
clear.
yeah.
Mm.
It's like,
I mean,
this is
I would
like,
be a
because of
hardcore
classical
progressive in
liberalness.
1950,
Right.
but it's not 1950, so I'm not a progressive anymore.
Right. No, like just
Well,
to be clear on that, like Trump
pretty
is
soon-
and was a '90s
soon-
Democrat. He has not changed. So if you want to look at
Yes.
like the way Republicans were doing stuff today, they're basically trying to follow a '90s Democrat's lead, which is fine, I guess.
Well, let's be fair. He was an
Except
80s
I'm gonna go with
Democrat, not a
90s
90s Democrat.
No,
I
he
am
loved
really
Clinton in
honestly
the
okay
90s.
with that. The 90s Democrats had all the principles, but they dropped the religious bullshit.
Well,
And it
except for the
made,
part where they
it
didn't
made
like black people. They're just very racist. We can be.
Well, I mean, they still are. I mean, it's kind of necessary to be a
Yeah.
Democrat if you want to be in the party. You kind of have to hate black people.
Yeah, let's look at Captain. If if you didn't vote for me, then you ain't black. God damn, that guy's such a fucking. He's a flagrant racist, and he got supposedly 81 million votes. I can't say
Well,
that.
somebody
out
got
loud.
80 million votes.
Let's-
But anyway. With that being said, you know what? I'd say we're probably getting real kind of long in the tooth, and I know you guys are going to start getting silly if I
Yeah.
keep you up too much later. So I'd better not. But with that said, I'll go ahead and throw out an extra spicy one just since we're on the topic. If white lives don't matter, then no lives matter. So that's a really spicy one in the show on. What do you think?
And Islam is right about women.
In their ways, too true. They make some valid points.
That doesn't
I mean,
bother me.
well, let's look at what the Taliban just said today. They were asked about what
Oh
they
my
think
God.
about human rights, and they said, "Well, why don't you ask Joe Biden what he thinks about human rights?" And,
Holy
they
shit!
make
Was
a
that
valid
such
point.
a clapback? That was brutal. I was sitting there. I saw that and I felt that in my balls, man.
Mm.
That was
Oh, it's good stuff.
that was a punch. That was a punch from across the ocean.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, I mean, that China has trained them well.
So let us
Yeah,
all
that was-
remember that not only are we dealing with this is a Saigon squared, but we're not dealing with a Carter squared. We're dealing with Carter cubed, and that's just kind
Impossibly
of
minced in the future.
good stuff,
Maybe
right?
diced.
Nice. So anyway, you can find me at that fake guy Dan. You can find Steve at Ratman720. Good luck, and you can find Craig at CraigBob99. Just about everywhere.
You can find Steve bitching in my replies.
Also, that yes.
Profusely
That's
and routinely.
probably the only. Yeah, because I have successfully narrowed all of the toxic individuals out of my thing except for you. So the Twitter algorithm's like, man, this shit's vanilla. I'm gonna throw this asshole in here. He responds to him. Everybody else is gone.
Twitter.
It's bad.
Well, that being said, look us up,
You
give us a
know what?
follow.
I would have a bigger social media platform if I could actually access my phone during the day. But because I can't, fuck it. Like, why would I waste my time on anyone other than a fellow engineer? That's
I mean,
just
being
a
entirely
waste of
honest, that's
I
probably
feel
much more
appreciated.
healthy for your mental state of being.
It depends
I
on
don't
the
know.
day.
I listen to. I have to see this asshole flow through my feed.
Well, yeah, but not all day, right? So there you go.
This
That's
is true.
It's true.
Small victories.
He's the pre-shower wank off.
I should show you. I should start sending some fucking just send messages to your desk.
Weird art.
Like Steve, you got more. You got more.
Oh, send him
mail for this
faxes, man.
idiot. Yeah, let's send him black faxes
There you go.
with a white dick on it, so he knows it's me.
Good times. Good times.
Ah.
So, listeners, viewers, and good people, if you got any questions, ideas, comments, anything, hit any one of us up in any of the comments below or in any of the social media. You can find us all over. So, thanks for being here. We'll be back again Maybe on schedule, maybe not. Who fucking knows? But there will be something either at the end of the week or the next.
That's right.
And by God, we're gonna keep talking. They can't shut us up. So talk to you all again
Yeah,
soon.
anyway.
Oh, they can shut us up. They just haven't yet. We're not cool enough.
Oh, no worries. I've got my Odyssey already set. They actually can't shut us up. Not yet. So we're
Nice.
if we got to migrate, hey, we're just gonna take the rating from PG and we're gonna knock that shit right out the fucking water, and we're just gonna start talking about
do
things
it.
that are redacted. So until then, let's see if we can make it big on the big platforms, and if not, well, fuck it. We'll just fucking go rogue. Be good. Talk to you soon.